Chapter 101 Curse I. By the time Li Tongya emerged from the cave dwelling, Mount Huaqian was eerily silent. The members of the Lu family had sealed off many courtyards and had captured all members of the Ji family on the mountain. The stone path beneath Li Tongya's feet was stained with droplets of blood. Circling the mountain, Li Tongya spotted Lu Cixi descending from the sky with a bald man, carrying Ji Dengxi's severed head. Both had expressions of satisfaction as if they had made significant gains. Lu Cixi grinned at Li Tongya. Fortune seems to favor us. Amidst the chaos on Mount Huazhong, there was only one cultivator of the peak embryonic breathing realm. Despite being a mere youth in his 20s, the young master of the Ji family tried to destroy the jade slips of their family's legacies. We then bashed his head in and managed to save half of the total 6 jade slips. He explained triumphantly. Itonya nodded as he heard this, his thoughts drifting to the bottle of spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the cave dwelling. Ji Dengxi must have saved that for the young family head. We'll talk about the jade slips later, he spoke in a grave tone, before gesturing toward the small mountain courtyard and the cave dwelling that was behind him. The Wan family's opulence is evident. Scouring this mountain, I found numerous spirit fields on Mount Huaqian, probably yielding around 100 jin of spirit patties annually. Not only that, there's also an exceptional spirit spring. Together, they amount to more than 200 spirit stones. Will you be able to pay, Brother Lu? Lu Cixi chuckled, then produced 12 small black flags adorned with white patterns from his storage pouch. Do you recognize these, brotherly? Li Tongya retreated a few steps before soaring into the air. Formation flags? He asked, eyeing the flags warily. Correct. Catching sight of Li Tongya's guarded stance, Lu Cixi realized his gesture might have been misconstrued, but he hastened to explain. These are the Wan family's prized possession, the white feather purple flags. They used to be Wan Huaqian's Dharma artifacts before they were left on Mount Huaqian as part of the Earth-locking Huaqian formation. The Ji family acquired it years ago. They're definitely worth about 200 spirit stones. Having visited Mount Lijing, Lu Cixi was well aware of the Li family's inadequate defensive mountain formation, leaving them vulnerable to surprise attacks like the one that was orchestrated by Jianixi. His offer definitely struck Li Tongya where it hurt, as he indeed needed a reliable defensive formation on Mount Lijing to safeguard against future threats. Senior, you're exaggerating. The white feather purple flags are merely formation flags of the Qi cultivation realm. It's worth no more than 100 spirit stones. Li Tongya shook his head, declining the offer. Though tempting, spending 200 spirit stones on a set of formation flags was simply impractical and unreasonable. In that case, I'll add another 50 spirit stones. Lu Cixi added defiantly, taking out 50 more spirit stones from his storage pouch before handing them along with the flags to Li Tongya. I've been generous, my friend, combined with the valuables you found in the cave dwelling. These should make your journey here worthwhile. Lu Cixi said with a serious expression. Tongya paused for a moment before finally obliging and accepting the items, carefully stowing them away. Indeed, with our families set to be neighbors, there's no need to be overly calculated with each other, he replied thoughtfully after a short pause. I agree, Lu Cixi remarked, his smile widening as he handed over the 3 jade slips to Li Tongya. We've transcribed these already. These are the original slips. You can have them. Li Tongya understood that Lu Cixi was assuring him, letting him know that they were not giving him copies with tampered contents in order to deceive him. He accepted the jade slips, checking its contents with his spiritual sense before nodding appreciatively. Thank you for your generosity, Senior Lu. I'll take my leave now. With that, he gave a curt but respectful nod to the bald man before departing swiftly. The bald man cupped his fist in response as he watched Li Tongya depart. Although this matter has been settled and Mount Huazhong has been returned to my family, the Yu family in the north is still very influential. Let's continue to keep an eye out for each other, Brother Lu. Yes, take care, brother. And Lu Cixi nodded and watched the man leave before entering the cave dwelling. Watching the running spirit spring, a sigh of relief escaped him before a satisfied smile appeared on his face. At last, the spirit spring is in our possession, and the cave spring clear qi is as good as secured. My descendants won't need to practice those common grade 1 techniques. As soon as Li Tongya landed on Mount Lijing, he immediately spotted Li Xianxian pacing around anxiously. Upon seeing Li Tongya, Li Xianxian breathed a sigh of relief. Second uncle, he greeted cheerfully. Tongya smiled and nodded in acknowledgement before taking out a long pole and handing it to Li Xianxian. Try swinging it, he suggested with a small smile. Li Xianxian did not possess a Dharma artifact, so his eyes sparkled in eagerness as he examined the weapon. Although it was only a Dharma artifact of the embryonic breathing realm, it was a significant upgrade for the Li family, especially considering the fact that Li Tongya still wielded a longsword of the embryonic breathing realm himself. Examining the Ji family storage pouch of the Qi cultivation realm, Li Tongya found it to be rather modest, containing only miscellaneous items, 2 spirit stones, talismans, and pills, all of the embryonic breathing realm. I guess I'll leave these for Xianfeng. Li Tongya decided that Li. Xianfeng had attained the 5th stage of the embryonic breathing realm, and therefore was able to use a storage pouch. Since Li Tongya had taken his pouch back, he figured he would give this one to Li Xianfeng. Formation flags of superior quality among those of the Qi cultivation realm. Inspecting the 12 white feather purple flags, Li Tongya admired them briefly before stowing them back into his pouch and taking out 3 jade slips. He picked up the first jade slip and assessed it with his spiritual sense. The Golden Light Edge Technique manual that Li Tongya reckoned that it was one of the Ji family's legacy techniques, likely brought back home by their daughter. It was a grade 3 authentic technique, akin to the Li family's River 1 Qi technique, drawing upon the golden stone sharp Qi found in golden jade mines. There's only one golden jade mine in the Yu state, and it's located near the mountain gate of the Golden Tang Gate. Li Tongya retrieved the jade bottle he had taken from the cave dwelling, confirming its contents with his spiritual sense. Shimmering like gold and sharp like a blade. There's no doubt about it. This is the golden stone sharp Qi. He stowed away the 2 items before shifting his attention to the other 2 jade slips. Point 1 contained the pure spiritual Qi transformation technique, a grade 1 cultivation method that harnessed the minor pure spiritual Q. Li Tongya shook his head and stored away without much interest. The other jade slip was titled Records of Talisman Crafting this autumn, detailing various basic talisman crafting techniques. It was a collection of notes written by a cultivator at the peak of the Qi cultivation realm named Si Buoxiu. At this discovery, Li Tongya could not help but wonder how it came into the possession of the Ji family. Si Buoxiu? I wonder if he's related to Si Yuanbai in any way. Li Tongya muttered to himself as he skimmed through the contents. His eyes fell on a passage at the end. Talisman crafting is a wondrous art first disseminated by the Moonlight Origin Mansion. Numerous talismans can be arranged into formations, and the process of converting talismans into Qi is particularly exquisite. If one could master this art, Moonlight Origin Mansion, Talisman Qi, Li Tongya let out a long sigh, his thoughts wandering once more to the possible connection between the mirror and the Moonlight Origin Mansion. Though increasingly convinced of their association, he found little solace in this realization. I wonder if getting involved in this is a blessing or a curse. Chapter 102, Curse to Bastard. Mu Jiaomon's palm struck fiercely, shattering the skull of the man before him. He grabbed the tribesman from Mount Yu, his rage mounting. Trash! Where's Li Xianping? This head that you presented belongs to a tribesman from Mount Yu. He roared, his voice almost shaking with fury. His eyes blazed with anger as he continued to pummel his subordinate, the tribesman now coughing up spurts of blood. That day, their attempt to capture Li Tongya had failed. Upon his return, he discovered that the woman he captured had also escaped. Mu Jiaomon cursed his oversight, now learning that she was likely associated with the Li family. I should have used a spell to incapacitate her instead of letting her flee. As he sank back into his seat, Mu Jiaomon knew he had no time to waste dwelling on her. His mind churned with an even more troublesome task before him, dealing with the elusive and formidable Li Xianping. This bastard seems to have eyes on the top of his head and on his buttocks. He's like a starving wolf, or rather, a pest. Li Xianping has roamed the heart of Mount Yu's territories for quite some time now. Initially, when word of his actions first spread, he had rallied over 1,000 followers, only to be effortlessly defeated. However, by the time further news surfaced, he had already moved south. There, he commanded his forces in a ruthless assault, slaying tribal elders and seizing their provisions. Despite the presence of Qi cultivators, Li Xianping outwitted them time and again, slipping away before they could ever confront him directly. Mu Jiaomon had lost several nights of sleep before Li Xianping's severed head was finally brought into his tent. He breathed a sigh of relief and declared Li Xianping dead, only to be confounded when reports surfaced of Li Xianping gathering the vagrants in the west and continuing his rampage southward. Mu Jiaomon wasted no time in mobilizing his forces to crush him once more. Yet, despite their efforts, they found no trace of Li Xianping or his forces. Instead, reports of his activities continued to spread, leaving Mu Jiaomon to question the extent of Li Xianping's true cultivation. In the ensuing days, the situation deteriorated extremely rapidly. Each day, Mu Jiaomon's tent received a head purported to be Li Xianping's, yet upon inspection, they were merely the heads of random people of Mount Yu. The western defense line suffered 12 consecutive attacks, nearly allowing Li Xianping to slip back to the east. Because of his many evasions, rumors of his omnipresence began circulating throughout the northern foothills of Mount Yu. The latest news revealed that Li Xianping had advanced to the Great Jueting, commanding nearly 10,000 vagrants. This forced Mu Jiaomon to return from his campaign to return to the aid of the Great Jueting. Only the Great King can truly vanquish this relentless scourge. General, he's not just a cultivator of the embryonic breathing realm. He's a cunning predator, a devil who could make the vagrants follow him around like they are under a spell. The clan shaman under his command trembled as he spoke, plunging Mu Jiaomon into the depths of despair. Even Jianixi, fighting in the front lines at the Golden Tang Gate, had remained silent throughout the entirety of the conversation. I don't care who or what he is. Either he dies, or I do. Mu Jiaomon hissed fiercely, desperate for assistance. Mu Jiaomon sought out the talisman shamans of Mount Wu, offering women and spirit items in exchange for their aid. To his relief, one finally agreed to come to his aid. Mu Jiaomon's letter was sent to the front lines by an eagle, and when it returned, Jianixi's response to his plea was, yes, either he dies, or you die. With trembling hands and feet, Mu Jiaomon hurriedly gathered the clan shamans, bringing them women and spirit items, including the children they captured from the Li family as requested by the talisman shaman before setting out for Mount Wu. Along the journey, his men continued trying to falsely claim credit by presenting severed heads of Mount Yu's tribesmen, claiming they belonged to Li Xiangping. Their actions infuriated Mu Jiaomon so much that he nearly beat them to death. Shit, what kind of a demon is he? Mu Jiaomon sat in the carriage in a daze, before shouts from the outside broke him from his thoughts. General, we've arrived at Mount Wu. Mu Jiaomon stepped out of the carriage and was greeted by stairs made of fine white jade before him. He shakily removed his shoes before ascending the mountain barefoot. The wind howled as he climbed through the darkness, with each owl's cry echoing through the night. Mu Jiaomon dared not lift his gaze, instead silently counting each step. After exactly 1,622 steps, he reached a large platform which was illuminated only by a faint glow that reflected off the jade. With a thud, Mu Jiaomon fell to his knees, his eyes drawn over to a dozen figures seated on the jade platform. All of them wore lavish attires and looked more like cultivators instead. You must be the general. Tell us what's happening. A voice belonging to one of the figures on the platform commanded, cold and unwavering. Mu Jiaomon hastily recited the speech he had carefully memorized, his words drowned out only by the shrill whispers emanating from the surrounding darkness. What's going on? Must we intervene in mortal affairs too? What do you know? If you disrupt the master's plan, you'll face dire consequences. What a useless bunch. They can't even handle a single cultivator of the embryonic breathing realm. Mu Jiaomon pressed his forehead firmly against the ground, not daring to even breathe. Finally, one of the men before him spoke up. Since none of you are willing to help, let's just use a curse to settle the matter once and for all and save ourselves an extra trip. A voice from below immediately cut in. Master said we're not allowed to interfere with matters of the mortal world with spells. Senior, please reconsider your plan. It is no matter, replied the figure reassuringly, shaking his head. This individual is not from Mount Yu, and among all the spells, curses are the safest. Besides, the target is unlikely to possess knowledge of such techniques nor pose a threat to us. The questioner nodded in agreement and commanded, bring forth the sacrifices. Several sacrifices that were as big as boars were carried forward by demonic creatures, exuding an aura that indicated their strength to be at peak Qi cultivation realm. Mu Jiaomon, peering and observing their reflections on the ground, noticed the calloused hands of the demonic creatures and their bodies that were marked with slave marks. Why are the demonic creatures marked? Before Mu Jiaomon could figure it out, the ground beneath him suddenly trembled. The jade on the platform shifted, revealing a large, round pit that was filled with boiling blood and scattered human bones. To make him senile, crippled, or kill him with a curse? Let's kill him with a curse to be safe, replied the figure in the middle coldly, before anyone else had time to answer. The man nodded before chanting a spell in a hoarse voice. Profound light, true talisman. There are foreign troops and rebels, evil ghosts and demons, threatening the lives of my subjects. I respectfully request the true talisman to destroy the flesh and blood of evildoers. Let them be reduced to bones. Mu Jiaomon listened in silence, his emotions roiling with a mix of conflict and amazement. The use of curses had always been frowned upon in battles between Mount Yu's armies, and he struggled to reconcile his actions with his conscience. He's not one of us from Mount Yu. He consoled himself in his heart quietly. When the boy from the Li family was decapitated, his blood flowed like a river, his headless body convulsing cruelly like a demonic pig in his own pool of blood. Mu Jiaomon was overcome by the scent of blood, memories of the day he and Jianixi had slain there, king to spark their rebellion flooding back to his mind. The great king they killed was also a paunchy man, and the Mount Yu people were cheering as they divided the spoils. Though Jianixi was laughing heartily, he was terrified to death. He couldn't help but question the reasoning behind Jianixi's rebellion. Jianixi merely sat on his horse and pointed his long whip at the people of Mount Yu who were celebrating. It's for the people. That was his answer, at least that's what he told himself. Even now, with the northern foothills conquered, Jianixi continued fighting. There were 10,000 vagrants outside of Great Juading, and Mu Jiaomon struggled to comprehend how Li Xiangping had managed to amass such a big army within enemy territory. Great King, does any of this still hold meaning? Mu Jiaomon pondered silently, closing his eyes to stop his tears from flowing down his face. For the first time, he foresaw the truth of everything before his great king did. Chapter 103. No Room for Escape? Li Xiangping sat quietly by the fire which illuminated his face with a golden red sheen. His clothes were worn and torn, and he seemed utterly exhausted. The ends of his leg hair were curling up from the heat of the flame, but yet his gaze remained laser-focused on the yams roasting in the fire pit. He had been fleeing from danger to danger these days and had narrowly escaped death at the hands of Qi cultivators multiple times now. He has already grown accustomed to deaths, having killed countless Mount Yu's generals, and having experienced rallying people to assault great Juting. Li Xiangping's demeanor had changed from that of a privileged courtyard dweller to that of a rugged man. The blood and flames of the multitude of battles have toughened him up, gradually turning him into another Jianixi. Great king, Mu Jiaomon has gone to Mount Wu, and no one knows what his intentions are. Instead of correcting his way of addressing Li Xiangping, Awisi and his men even managed to influence Li Qiuyang and Chen Donghe to refer to Li Xiangping as the Great King as well. Chen Donghe's leather armor bore a cut, revealing a crimson wound beneath the dirt and dried bloodstains. With a map in hand, he traced the routes and patterns with his fingers thoughtfully. "You must tread carefully, Great King," he advised with a grave expression. Indeed. Li Xiangping chuckled as he silently grasped the crystal-clear pearl in his pocket. He's most likely seeking help from a cultivator of the Foundation establishment realm. I can't continue wasting any more time, and I ought to think of a way to send this thing home as soon as possible. Li Xiangping had been fighting westward and had acquired the transparent pearl from the altar of a major tribe. Sensing the profound talisman pearl in his Qihai acupoint reacting to it, he decided to take it along with him as he figured it probably bore a connection to the mirror at home. Glancing mischievously at Chen Donghe, who had an extremely serious look on his face, Li Xiangping decided to tease him as he looked up at the boy with a mischievous smile. "Hey here, are you smitten with my daughter, Tiana? Shall I arrange a marriage for you?" he teased with a cheeky tone. Chen Donghe's handsome face immediately flushed and his eyes darted down to stare at his toes silently, embarrassed. Li Qiuyang burst into laughter immediately, which earned him a kick from Chen Donghe in response. Though the boy did not dare to meet Li Xiangping's gaze, Li Xiangping shook his head and chuckled. "If Tiana accepts it, I have no objections. My only condition is that you must take her as your first wife." Hearing the approval of his potential father-in-law, Chen Donghe blushed even more, struggling to speak. "I'll never disappoint her," he mumbled, stumbling over his words in deep embarrassment. The crowd erupted into laughter, and Chen Donghe immediately wished the ground would just swallow him then and there. Awisi laughed so hard that he coughed. "Sheesh, the men on Mount Yu snatch any woman they fancy as their wives. No one does things like you people. You want to try doing that?" Li Xiangping asked with an eyebrow raised and a teasing smile. Awisi quickly begged for mercy, his quick reaction amusing Chen Donghe so much that he even forgot about his own embarrassment earlier. The aroma of roasted yams filled the air as Li Xiangping savored his meal. It reminded him of his younger days when he and his elder brother, Li Changhu, would secretly roast yams by the fire pit. Li Changhu always found ways to make him snacks back when he was just a 12 or 13-year-old boy. Beside him, Li Qiuyang scanned their surroundings with caution, ever watchful for the piercing gaze of the eagle eyes in the sky. His gaze then fell upon Li Xiangping, his eyes brimming with profound reverence. Li Xiangping has led them through countless perilous situations and has achieved remarkable victories. Just as the people of Mount Yu revered Jianixi as their king, Li Xiangping's soldiers believed their leader to be invincible. While everyone's attention was on Li Xiangping, he suddenly dropped the yam he was eating, which fell onto the ground with a thud. His expression was frozen in disbelief. The evade death, prolong life talisman Qi, which had crossed his mind countless times in moments of crisis and peril, suddenly illuminated brightly. A profound sense of danger gripped Li Xiangping as he glimpsed a vision of himself kneeling on the ground, blood spewing from his mouth, surrounded by desperate cries for help. "I'm going to die. There's no escaping it," he gasped quietly. "There's no delaying it." He felt a chill run down his spine and immediately felt lightheaded. Hands trembling, he snatched the map from Chen Donghe and grabbed a piece of burning charcoal from the fire pit with his bare hands. Closing his eyes for a moment, he began scribbling on the map. "Great King." Chen Donghe was flabbergasted and did not know what to do, falling onto his knees helplessly as he watched Li Xiangping worryingly. After Li Xiangping had finished scribbling on the map, he shoved a transparent pearl into his hand. "Mu Jiaomon will definitely be back after I'm gone. Follow this path eastward to return home," he instructed hastily, his voice filled with curt urgency. But before Chen Donghe could respond, Li Xiangping cut him off. "No matter what happens, you must deliver this pearl to Li Tongya," he hissed through tightly gritted teeth. "Everyone." Li Xiangping rose to his feet, ignoring Chen Donghe's stunned silence. "After I'm gone, all of you must head east with Donghe. Do not linger here," he commanded loudly, his voice full of conviction Li Qiuyang and the others were lost for words, watching as Li Xiangping's voice grew softer as he sank to the ground weakly. Great king. Family head. Li Xiangping lifted his gaze and watched the blazing sun in the sky as an array of illusions danced before him. It was as though a piece of the sun itself had broken off, hurtling toward him like a shooting star. The broken piece burned brightly before landing on his chest, scalding his senses. He once roasted a chief from Mount Yu alive, and now the same pain and agony consumed him. Great king. The world darkened around Li Xiangping. Although he could not see anything, he felt someone's weight on his body and wet tears falling onto his cheeks. Despite the agony, a faint smile tugged at his lips. What a low blow, he murmured weakly. Li Xiangping's long hair fell in disarray, revealing sparse white strands. He has lived to an age where ordinary farmers would have had grandchildren of their own and would have suffered very few grievances in life. Yet, the only thing on his mind was the Li family, surviving amidst myriad forces. From the void emerged thick black qi, enveloping his gray-black eyes and withering his body. Li Xiangping coughed up black blood. I've lived a great life, he proclaimed with all his might, his voice hoarse and strained. Memories flashed before him before finally settling on a meandering river where a teenager had just caught a green-tailed fish, then picked up a broken bluish-gray mirror with a curious look on his face. The sunlight illuminated his face, and a dazzling smile graced his lips. The black qi dissipated as quickly as it had appeared, snaking its way back into the void as Li Xiangping's body withered completely. However, a gray light suddenly burst forth from Li Xiangping's Shenyang mansion. Every last trace of the black qi was absorbed by the talisman qi in a Shenyang mansion like a hungry ghost devouring a feast. Only Li Xiangping's withered corpse remained kneeling on the ground, a final white light, exuding from his qi-high acupoint before gently fading into the void too. Almost instantly, the crowd let out a loud cry in unison. It's a curse. He was killed by curse. Jianixi, you coward. Awisi cried out in anguish. Family head. Chen Donghe wept before Li Xiangping's body, clenching his fists with such might that they bled. Sobs filled the air as Li Qiuyang made his way forward, eyes red and glistening. The sound of flapping wings suddenly filled the air, silencing Chen Donghe's cries. He was stunned for a moment before immediately pressing his ears to Li Xiangping's chest. Everyone quiet, he yelled at the crowd with a deep frown as he tried to focus. The cries and commotion immediately ceased at his command, and after listening for a few moments, he carefully laid Li Xiangping's body on the ground. With trembling hands, Chen Donghe placed his fingers gently on Li Xiangping's pale lips. He applied a little force to part them and immediately heard the flapping noises growing louder. Awisi and Li Qiuyang, standing on opposite sides of his body, were visibly stunned. They too kneeled down to check. Buzz! With a sudden force, Chen Donghe watched as a grayish-black locust burst out violently from Li Xiangping's mouth. Its body was adorned with barbs, the patterns on its wings resembling leaves that T bounced in Chen Donghe's hand for a moment before taking flight, its wings flapping rapidly as it whizzed away. This is locusts! So many locusts! The people shouted in alarm as thousands of grayish-black locusts emerged from Li Xiangping's body, soaring into the sky like a dark storm. People stumbled backward in pain as the swarm of locusts flew past them, their barbs hurting their skin. Donghe, this is Awisi's voice slowly trailed off. Chen Donghe, with tears still streaming down his face, grabbed Li Xiangping's ebony bow and cast a glance at the disappearing corpse as the locusts slowly escaped in the night sky. Chen Donghe gritted his teeth in anger. Chapter 104. No room for escape too. Meanwhile on Mount Lijing, a bright, gleaming white pearl emerged abruptly from the void before returning back into the mirror on the stone platform, which stirred up a flurry of pale moonlight. Just then, a sigh echoed through the courtyard. Li Xiangping, it has been 25 or 6 years since you last picked me up. The memory of the boy who was catching fish in the river remained vivid in Lu Jiangxian's mind, but the boy had fallen to the west at Lu. Jiangxian felt a whirlwind of emotions in him, threatening to spill out at any moment. Before the words could form on his lips, he found himself at a loss. His words drowned out by emotions, he felt a surge in his divine sense and mana as the information recorded in the profound pearl talisman seed flowed into the mirror. Li Xiangping had perished because of a curse. His cultivation had stopped at the peak of the embryonic breathing realm, but the amount of mana that came from the profound pearl talisman seed greatly exceeded Lu Jiangxian's expectations. The feedback from the profound pearl talisman seed seems to not only be related to cultivation, but surprisingly also involves intangible aspects such as luck and fortune. He absorbed Jianixi's fortune and siphoned Mount Yu's blessings. Light gathered in Lu Jiangxian's mirror, and the supreme profound light was also dancing around it. Its power was now strong enough to vanquish cultivators at the peak of Qi cultivation realm. The increased mana capacity allowed him to release 5 beams of supreme profound light consecutively, which was enough to confront a cultivator of the foundation establishment realm. though he would need 3 days to recover afterward. The black chi of that curse was converted from talisman chi. I wonder if it changed after the talisman chi within Li Xiangping's body devoured it. Lu Jiangxian has spent the past few days in the courtyard, studying the structure of the curse, but progress was slow. Fortunately, he did not require sustenance, nor did he require sleep. Hence, he was able to devote over a decade to his studies without the need for haste. That pearl, though, Lu Jiangxian gulped. His desires had diminished greatly since becoming an artifact spirit, and he made every effort to focus on the activities at the foot of the mountain to keep his emotions and priorities in check. Yet, the precious pearl Li Xiangping had acquired stirred an unexpected longing deep within him. Outside the courtyard, Li Tongya was teaching Li Xianling swordsmanship when a shiver suddenly overcame him, causing him to stop abruptly. "What's wrong, father?" Li Tongya furrowed his brow as unease crept into his body. "Nothing," he replied after a brief pause, waving his hand dismissively. "I'd better have a grand formation set up on Mount Lijing as soon as possible. I feel vulnerable without a reliable formation for protection." Clang. The sudden impact on the door and windows drew the attention of Li Tongya and Li Xianling instantly. Li Xianling approached cautiously and opened the window, revealing a scrawny grayish-black locust that had crashed into it. Its upper half had been smashed against the window, prompting him to peel it off from the glass suspiciously before turning back to face his father. Li Tongya already knew that it was a locust with the help of his spiritual sense, but he felt an inexplicable sadness as he examined the locust more closely. Under Li Tongya's analysis, the locust revealed no trace of demonic energy, yet a strangely familiar sensation lingered. "Let's venture into the mountains again tomorrow and see if we can gather any information about Xiangping." Shaking off the unsettling feeling, Li Tongya stretched out and tossed the locust out of the window. "Don't lose focus now. Read the profound water sword technique manual carefully," he urged his son gently, an unreadable expression on his face. However, as soon as those words left his mouth, the noise of a commotion reached his ears. Li Xianxian entered happily, cradling a bundle in his arms. "Second uncle," he exclaimed. Li Tongya's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Is it a boy or a girl?" he immediately asked, hardly able to hide the joy in his face. Li Xianxian had married a woman from a different clan with a spiritual orifice 2 years ago. However, she was not really gifted in cultivation and had only condensed the profound scenery chakra, thus attaining only the first stage of the embryonic breathing realm. Li Xiangping had also picked a few beautiful mortal women for Li Xianxian to take as his concubines. And now, this child marked the first direct descendant of the Li family's 3rd generation. "It's a boy." Li Xianxian could not contain the smile on his face as he cradled the baby closer. Seeing this, Li Tongya chuckled fondly. "This is our Li family's first 3rd generation heir. Have you thought of a name yet?" he asked. "According to the generation name, it should include Yuan," Li Xianxian said as he laughed softly, playing with his child for a moment before getting lost in his thoughts. "I'll name him Li Yuanxiu," he said finally. "Li Yuanxiu," Li Tongya repeated thoughtfully before nodding approvingly. "That's a good name," he remarked fondly as he glanced at the child once more. "How many children did your concubine bear?" Li Tongya's sudden question prompted Li Xianxian to look up. "A boy and a girl. They're 3 and 5 this year," he replied. Li Tongya fell deep into thought before speaking. "In the future, the direct descendants of our Li family will be part of the major sect. The children of the concubines without spiritual orifices will be assigned to the minor sect, and the ones with spiritual orifices will be part of the major sect, along with the direct descendants. For the children of those in the minor sect, the ones without spiritual orifices will form the branches, while those with spiritual orifices will be reinstated into the major sect." He spoke with a degree of solemnness in his voice. Li Xianxian took a moment to digest the information before finally nodding in understanding. "There are more than 2,000 members in Yi clan now. What do we do with the children with spiritual orifices from those in the branches?" he asked. "They'll be part of the minor sects." "That's as far as they can go," Li Tongya answered after a moment of contemplation. Considering Li Qiuyang's current status as a branch member of the Li clan, if he were to father a son with spiritual orifices, he could be reinstated into a minor sect. However, if his first grandson possessed spiritual orifices, he would not be able to be reinstated into the major sect. This ensures that all members of the major sect are direct descendants of grandfather. Li Xianxian said slowly, finally realizing the reasoning behind the system. Li Tongya's uneasy expression caught his attention. "Is something wrong, second uncle?" he asked, slightly hesitant. With a weary look on his face, Li Tongya sighed deeply before speaking once more. "I'm still worried about Xiangping. I'll take advantage of the night and make a trip to the west. You stay here and watch over the family." Chapter 105. The Great Drought. Mujimon sat in the huge, empty carriage, enduring the countless jolts and shakes caused by the rough terrain in Mount Yu's territory. The scene from the white jade platform was replaying endlessly in his mind. Drawing back the curtain, Mu Jiaomon scanned the parched and cracked land with the scorching sun hanging in the sky. When was the last time it rained? He asked loudly at the top of his voice. In 4 months, General. Mu Jiaomon pondered for a moment before he motioned for his subordinates. Withdraw the eastern defenses and drive the vagrants eastward. Let them torment the strange people there, he commanded. One of his subordinates hesitated for a moment. But if we withdraw the eastern defense line and Li Xiangping escapes, the subordinate's voice trailed off, his tone filled with concern. That bastard is dead. Mu Jiaomon roared, fury coursing through him. With a violent motion, he grabbed the man by the neck fiercely with a scowl. How many times do I have to tell you? That bastard is dead. 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 He screamed in anguish. His eyes turned red from the anger and was just about to strike down on the man when he was stopped by his subordinates around him dropping to their knees. Greetings, great king, their voices crying out in unison. Confused, Mu Jiaomon then slowly lifted his head to see Jianixi, who was looking down at him coldly. And Mu Jiaomon hurriedly flung the man aside and fell to his knees, pressing his forehead to the ground as color drained from his lips. Great king, he stuttered. Jianixi approached him, his gaze piercing and ferocious. Without a warning, he lashed out, delivering a strong kick to Mu Jiaomon's body. Worthless, he yelled angrily, and Mu Jiaomon was sent flying like a ball, crashing into several carriages. Rice and grain spilled onto the ground as he lay there, his men watching in fearful silence. After tumbling a few times, Mu Jiaomon hurriedly scrambled back to his feet and slapped himself across the face. Jianixi watched him for a moment before erupting into a scornful laugh. He was merely a cultivator of the embryonic breathing realm, yet you and your men couldn't even deal with him, and had to end up hiring a talisman shaman to kill him through a curse. You truly are a disappointment, Mu Jiaomon, he sneered. Then Mu Jiaomon numbly slapped himself as Jianixi's voice echoed from above. You won't be participating in the great sacrifice ritual that's happening in a few days. Use this time to stay in the camp and reflect on your actions. Mu Jiaomon snapped his head up suddenly, coming to a sudden realization, but before he could speak, Jianixi struck him with a hard blow to his abdomen which immediately sent him into unconsciousness. Drag him away, Jianixi ordered in a low voice as he watched Mu Jiaomon be hauled off to the camp. Turning toward the towering Mount Wu, live, he murmured, his voice so soft it was barely audible. After making a round in the mountain forest, Li Tongya rose from the desolate stronghold and pondered as the morning sun illuminated the sky. The absence of rising smoke in the east suggests that the Mount Yu army has withdrawn. How could Mu Jiaomon allow Xiangping to return east so easily? Swiftly traversing east, he noted the barren land beneath his feet, realizing it had been nearly half a year since the last rainfall. It's no wonder there are so many Mount Yu vagrants. Li Tongya frowned, assessing the situation in Mount Yu's territory and considering the likelihood of the stragglers crossing the border. The granaries of the Li family have been abundant in recent years, capable of supporting a few thousand vagrants. However, a prolonged drought may deplete the Meiche River and threaten the food production. The Ji family's letter also mentioned the sacrifice. I suspect Jianixi doesn't have much time to spare. As Li Tongya ventured deeper into Mount Yu's territory, he encountered increasingly parched land and trees that had no barks. In the distance, the imposing silhouette of the great Juding slowly emerged. The lone city within Mount Yu bore the scars of time, its weather-beaten walls now showing signs of decay, both inside and out. At the edge of the city stood a towering altar made of soil, wood, and stone, its construction almost complete. It was rumored that Jianixi would be offering sacrifices to the heavens there, aiming to unite the world under a single cause. Despite their weary appearance, the craftsmen laboring on the altar exuded hope and reverence, eagerly anticipating Jianixi to end the war and bring them stability. This is as far as I can go, Li Tongya murmured to himself, coming to a halt. His search this time was as fruitless as his last. Deciding to turn back, he reluctantly retraced his steps toward Moongaze Lake. Moongaze Lake had receded dramatically, its dry, cracked riverbed littered with the carcasses of dead fish and shrimp. The stench was so putrid and pungent that one could hardly keep their eyes open. With jackals and vultures scavenging for food, the area looked no different than a desolate wasteland. Li Tongya only made one quick round around the lake before immediately making his way back to Mount Lijing. Upon his return, Li Tongya was greeted by the sight of a massive black pig's carcass sprawled in the courtyard. Its glossy fur still glistened in the sunlight, and its tusks, long as an adult's arm and as white as jade, protruded prominently. Meanwhile, as Li Xianling and Li Xianxian diligently performed the spirit sealing technique on the pig's joints and acupoints, Li Xianfeng leaned against a huge rock and cleaned his bow. Second uncle, Li Xianfeng exclaimed as he spotted Li Tongya's descent. With a bow in one hand and a hemp bag in the other, he pushed himself from the rock and straightened, his face beaming with excitement. This mountain pig demon is really huge, with strength at the peak of the embryonic breathing realm. It should provide a hearty addition to our meal. Li Tongya chuckled softly before inspecting the demon pig with his spiritual sense. He noticed a long, black, gleaming arrow embedded in its brain. It was the only mark of injury present in its otherwise pristine flesh. Just one shot? He asked in surprise. Yep. Li Xianfeng confirmed proudly, his head held high. With one swift motion, he slung his long bow behind him and bent down, pulling out the long arrow from the pig demon's empty eye socket. He flung away the red and white matter that clung to it before continuing. I chased this pig demon the entire night. Finally at dawn, while it was gnawing on wood and bamboo, I shot an arrow that pierced its eye and its brain, which killed it instantly. Good job. Li Tongya nodded approvingly as he heard this. However, he added a word of caution. Although this mountain pig demon may seem easy prey for your arrows, remember to stay cautious. Despite its swift demise by your hand, such creatures can still pose a threat. Be wary and hunt demons of the lower cultivation realm to hone your skills. Li Xianfeng heeded Li Tongya's caution, but a hint of defiance lingered in his expression. But this demon couldn't even touch the hem of my shirt, he said defensively. Li Tongya chuckled and patted Li Xuanfeng's shoulder affectionately, amused by his defiance. I know you're skilled with your bow. In our family, only your youngest uncle's swordsmanship could rival your talent. But you have to remember, the human body is vulnerable, he emphasized once more, and his tone had a hint of gentleness. As Li Tongya observed Li Xuanfeng's serious demeanor, he decided to speak once more. Though cultivators at the embryonic breathing realm possess strength akin to an ox, capable of feats like moving heavy objects and scaling walls, they remain far weaker than demonic creatures. I've faced many adversaries of the Qi cultivator realm, and do you know why those who lose often sustain serious injuries? He added, an eyebrow raised. Is it due to the enemy's spells? Li Xianfeng guessed, intrigued. Not entirely, Li Tongya said as he shook his head. It's because they fall. Chapter 106. The Great Drought 2. Li Tongya then went on to explain further. When cultivators engage in aerial combat, those lacking in mental fortitude are susceptible to the pain and fear inflicted by their enemies. As a result, they may lose control and plummet to the ground, sustaining severe injuries such as broken tendons and bones. In such a state, they lack the strength to continue battling their foes. His words sparked contemplation among Li Xianxian and Li Xianling, who were gathered around Li Xianfeng, nodding in understanding. He grinned and remarked, I'm glad we still have you around to guide us, second uncle. Sheesh. Li Tongya smiled wryly at the boy's cheekiness, observing Li Xianfeng as he picked up the sack with his right arm. Look, second uncle, he said with a chuckle. He untied the rope with a swift motion, releasing 3 small mountain pigs from the sack. Li Xianfeng grabbed 2 of the pigs by the neck in each hand, holding them securely. I found 3 mountain pigs in that beast den. Can we raise them at home? He asked. Tongya nodded in response. We do have quite a number of spirit rice bran and leaves, and also stuff part from the demonic beasts we've killed before. But then again, mountain pigs have a big appetite, and it might be challenging to raise even one of them. That's not a problem. Li Xianfeng laughed. With a hard squeeze of his palms, Li Xianfeng killed the 2 small mountain pigs in his hands instantly, leaving only the one in the sack still struggling to escape. These little demonic creatures are formidable opponents. We'll need a cultivator outside of the main family to keep an eye on them. Li Tongya turned his attention to Li Xianxian, who was busy performing spirit sealing technique on the carcass. Xianer, how are all the cultivators in the side family faring? He asked. Excluding Chun Donghe and Li Qiuyang, there are 3 cultivators that don't bear the surname Li. One of them is from the Yi clan, but they have been returned to the side family. The rest have also been married into the Li family. He replied promptly. Good. Li Tumya nudda approvingly. How are their cultivations? Not satisfactory. Li Xianxian continued with a sigh, shaking his head. The cultivation method they use is the Azure Essence Meridian Nourishment Technique, which we obtained from Senior Si Yuanbai. Compared to our Supra Dash, Li Xianxian intended to mention the Supreme Breathing Meridian Nourishment Sutra. But before he could utter these words, the profound pearl talisman seed in his Qihai acupoint suddenly interrupted his thoughts. It startled him so much that it also caught the attention of Lu Jiangxian, who was engrossed in his research. With his divine sense, Lu Jiangxian swiftly discerned the cause of the disturbance. Realizing his mistake, Li Xianxian quickly corrected himself. Compared to our cultivation speed and technique, the technique they use pales in comparison. Currently, the strongest among them has only condensed the radiant Lord Chakra, the second stage of the embryonic breathing realm. They mainly spend their days taking care of the spirit patties and Wuzhou worms. He explained. Tongya nodded at his clarification, acknowledging the significant difference in cultivation levels between the main family and the branch cultivators as he nodded in understanding. Maybe we should consider letting them use a better cultivation method for the embryonic breathing realm. With only 6 profound pearl talisman seeds available, it's inevitable that there won't be enough for future generations of the major sect. We must avoid relying solely on common cultivation methods like the Azure Essence Meridian Nourishment Technique. While Li Xianxian and Li Xianling dealt with the mountain pig demon and summoned someone to carry it away, Li Xiaowen approached to deliver news that the Lu family had visited to report a death. Tongya's uncle, Lu Linfeng, had passed away during the night. While the younger members of the Li family were seemingly unfazed by the news, Li Tongya felt a squeeze in his heart. Now that he thought about it, he was already 40. Lu Linfeng was 25 years his senior and had lived to the ripe age of 65. In their village, such longevity was considered remarkable. Don't inform mother about this, he instructed. His mother's health had declined in recent years, and it worsened after his father's death, looking as though she had lost her soul. She found it difficult to focus, and would sometimes even wander off and get lost. Li Tongya feared that this news would only add to the poor woman's distress. I'll descend the mountain to take a look. Chen Donghe followed the trail Li Xiangping had drawn on the map, noticing the absence of any large groups of Mount Yu soldiers or station troops. Instead, there were only corpses scattered on the ground that were being scavenged by vultures and jackals. The cracked earth offered no water source except for a few small puddles remaining in the dry riverbed. The group of people walked in silence, their only company being the sound of sobs and wails. Out of the 1,000 who had set out, only around 200 had returned. Despite inflicting significant casualties and chaos on the enemy, those who had returned were wounded and filled with sorrow. Glancing at Li Yeshing lying curled up on a stretcher nearby, Chen Donghe saw him stir finally after 3 days of unconsciousness due to his broken hip. Where's the family head? Li Yeshing asked weakly, his voice barely a whisper. Up ahead, Chen Donghe replied, forcing a smile. Seeing Li Yeshing smiling before shutting his eyes, Chen Donghe felt a pang of sadness. He noticed a tear leaking from the corner of Li Yeshing's eye and could no longer hold back his emotions. I knew I couldn't hide it from you, Uncle Yeshing, he whispered as he choked back tears. How did he die? Li Yeshing asked finally, his voice full of emotion. Killed by a curse, Chen Donghe replied curtly, trying to hold his tears back. Yeshing let out a deep sigh as tears began welling up in his eyes once more. Yeshing mourned not only the loss of someone as powerful as Li Xiangping, but also the end of his own power and influence. The complicated relationship between them only added to the grief. Brother Xiangping, you and I are more alike than you think, Yeshing reflected, knowing Li Xiangping better than anyone else. When he was 15, he knew that the blood spilled on the rock was Li Yeshing's, his elder brother. He saw the guilt in Li Xiangping's eyes but pretended that he did not see it. When he was 12, Li Yeshing endured his elder brother's abuse. He knew that there were 3 knives on Mount Lijing. 2 were big and 1 was small. If he needed to rid himself of his brother's tyranny, he would have to cause a conflict between them. Yeshing's ears were constantly filled with rumors about Li Mutian's family. He treaded cautiously for 3 years, as though walking on thin ice before he finally got his older brother killed. He had expected Li Mutian to take action, but it was Li Xiangping who ultimately became the instrument of his liberation. In his gratitude, Li Yeshing spent a lifetime being Li Xiangping's loyal dog. Knowing that he had outlived him caused him immense suffering. I wish to become your blood brother in our next life, Brother Xiangping, just like Brother Tongya and Brother Changhu. Li Yeshing murmured, straining to reach for a bottle of poison at his waist. He had prepared the poison in case he fell into Mount Yu's hands and faced torture, and had yet to taste it. Surviving is merely existing in a state of lingering. Xiaowen has grown up and has found a companion in Xian. I've done enough for him as his parent, Li Yeshing muttered as he struggled to raise his hand, allowing the cold liquid to flow slowly through his lips. As the numbness spread in his mouth, he began writhing on the stretcher, his head rolling side to side, which disheveled his gray hair. God damn, it's bitter, he thought indignantly as he approached the end of his life. Chapter 107. Returning to the market. Li Tongya had finished attending the funeral and had changed out of his white robe when he realized that it was about time for the market at Moongaze Lake to open. He packed up the leather of demonic creatures and materials he had gathered in recent days and headed north. Patrolling the reeds a few times, he had hoped to seize the moment and gather a wisp of river pure chi in the river. To his dismay, he was greeted by a dry, withered landscape, forcing him to leave, empty-handed and disheartened. After months of drought, the rivers have dried up and the once vibrant reeds have turned yellow. There's no chance of finding any river pure chi in the river, he muttered to himself in disappointment. Leaving the reeds behind, Li Tongya rode the wind toward Moongaze Lake. The waterline had receded about 30 miles, revealing fish carcasses covered in maggots and many small islands that had revealed themselves now that the water had gone. With a wave of his sleeve, Li Tongya activated the hidden formation in the air, which emitted a bright burst of silver light. This time, it was different. With just a sweep of his spiritual sense, he had managed to locate the large boat on the lake. He quickly descended and headed in its direction that a young man with cultivation at the 3rd stage of embryonic breathing realm rushed out from the cabin of the boat almost instantly. My lord, are you heading to Moongaze Lake's market? He asked inquisitively. Yes, Li Tongya replied as he found a seat for himself. Seeing only the young man who promptly served him a bowl of tea and no signs of the white-haired old man who used to pilot the boat years ago, Li Tongya asked, I remember the old man who used to drive this boat more than 10 years ago. Has there been a change of ownership? The young man seemed surprised by the question. He set down the tea bowl before replying. That old man failed to break through to the chi cultivation realm and died of old age 10 years ago. None of his children possessed any spiritual orifice, so his eldest son exchanged all his spirit items for fields. They're now a wealthy family in their hometown. Litumia siga inwarli. He picked up the tea bowl, but refrained from drinking, setting it down cautiously. What a shame, he murmured. Indeed. The young man lowered his gaze before quickly adding, but the old man did live to be 108 years old. His longevity was the envy of all of us here on the boat. Oh, the young man observed Li Tongya quietly, who appeared to be only in his 30s, but had already reached the chi cultivation realm. He noticed the storage pouch and chi bottles tied to his waist, and the youth came to the conclusion that he was likely a descendant of a large family. With a bitter smile, he said, "Senior, you may not be aware of this, but rogue cultivators like us mostly rely on a grade 1 breathing technique of the embryonic breathing realm. We can barely even condense a chakra in over 10 years. Hence, it's not uncommon for us to be stuck in the embryonic breathing realm for a lifetime." I see. The youth had worked on the lake for over a decade, encountering many chi cultivators who rarely bothered to engage in conversation. Li Tongya, however, with his focused demeanor and frequent nods, encouraged the youth to speak. Taking this as his cue, the youth continued. Your talent is exceptional, senior. Attaining the chi cultivation realm at such a young age is remarkable. Rogue cultivators like us often live our entire lifetime with just a single technique of the embryonic breathing realm in possession, unable to access techniques needed to draw talismans or refine pills. It's a bitter reality. Upon hearing these words, Li Tongya's mind immediately drifted to the supreme breathing meridian nourishment sutra at home. I guess that cultivation method is worth more than the wealth of all the families in the entire Moongaze Lake combined. The cultivation speed seems to be at least 10 times faster than ordinary techniques, not to mention the purity of the refined mana that far surpassed others. Feigning ignorance, Li Tongya merely smiled. I wonder what grade of embryonic breathing realm techniques the disciples from the sect are practicing. He responded, leading the youth on. The youth nodded enthusiastically in response as soon as the words left Li Tongya's mouth. I've been working on this lake for over a decade now, and I've seen disciples of major sects who were as young as 20 and even the elderly at the first stage of the embryonic breathing realm in their 90s. Yet all I've heard is that the Azure Pond sect's embryonic breathing realm technique is the best among all the sects. It's a grade 5 technique, 4 times more effective than ordinary ones. That's truly remarkable, Li Tongya exclaimed in amazement, then steered the conversation toward Mount Yu. I've heard that Mount Yu in the west is quite formidable. The youth nodded vigorously. Indeed, I heard that the great king from Mount Yu has reached the peak of the chi cultivation realm. They've been targeting families under the governance of the Golden Tang Gate sect on the west coast. 3 family heads of the chi cultivation realm have already been killed. One can only imagine the significant losses those families have suffered. He replied with a sad shake of his head as he spoke. As Li Tongya listened, he noticed a few more people arriving on the boat, prompting the youth to reluctantly excuse himself to entertain the new patrons at El Itonya. Could not help but think to himself, that Jianixi is really powerful. I hope he dies soon so we can all sleep well at night. El Itonya listened to the conversation between the newcomers for a moment before feeling the boat jolting. Realizing that they had arrived at the market, disembarking, he rented a stall using a spirit stone as the deposit and displayed an array of materials, which included the talismans Li Xiangping had acquired after killing the old Taoist for sale. Once the stall had been set up, he took out a wooden slip to fill up his time while waiting. For customers to arrive at El Itonya had dedicated more than 10 years to studying talismans by now, having honed his skills to the point where his success rate in drawing a talisman was 1 in 10. While this could barely offset the cost of the talisman papers, it was still considered a loss if he were to factor in the expense of talisman ink. Determined to improve, he continued to practice in the hope that one day he could make a profit from his talismans. El Itonya glanced down and noticed the storage pouch and 2 chi bottles at his waist. After a few moments of consideration, he speculated that the boatman had probably identified him as a member of a prestigious family. Because of them, T.O. appear more inconspicuous. He wrapped the chi bottles in a piece of spirit cloth and tucked them into his chest pocket. Now, without them, he looked like a convincing rogue cultivator. El Itonya came early this time, so there were still a lot of people shopping. Within 2 hours, he had nearly sold out his goods and felt no inclination to wait around to sell off his last few items. He closed his stall, retrieved the spirit stone he had deposited earlier, and paid 10 jin of spirit rice as a rental fee. A profit of 11 spirit stones? That's not bad. Li Tongya spent 5 of them on a jade sprout pill. With the additional one that he had retrieved from the cave dwelling before, he decided to wait a few more months before attempting to break through to the 4th heavenly layer of the chi cultivation realm. Although the jade sprout pills are effective, their toxic after effects shouldn't be underestimated. I must wait for a few more months until every trace of its after effect has been detoxified before considering taking it again. As he took a few steps, Li Tongya noticed a middle-aged female cultivator approaching. She seemed to have condensed the jade capital chakra and attained the 5th stage of the embryonic breathing realm. Her appearance suggested that she was around the same age as Li Tongya, but she cupped her fist respectfully almost instantly as she spotted him. "Senior, do you still remember me?" Li Tongya thought she looked quite familiar, but her name eluded him. He could only reciprocate the gesture as he racked his mind. "If I may I ask," he began, awkwardly. "Market at the Cloud-Crown Peak, the Ebony Bough." The middle-aged female cultivator reminded him with a smile. The tea was then that Li Tongya recalled the Ebony Bough he had purchased for Li Xiangping at the market located at the foot of Cloud-Crown Peak, where he had submitted the tributes to the sect. The middle-aged lady was only a young girl when he had purchased that bough. Chapter 108. Returning to the market, too. "It's been more than 10 years since I've seen you. How have you been, fellow Taoist?" Li Tongya inquired, though secretly puzzled as to why she had approached him. The female cultivator wore a conflicted look on her face as she remarked, "It's only been a little over 10 years, yet you're already a qi cultivator. It's just luck," Li Tongya responded with a chuckle. "I'm Lin Jingyu. My husband is a qi cultivator named Su Yanping," said the female cultivator as she introduced herself. "Li Tongya," he replied politely, nodding his head. "We actually have found a cave dwelling. Are you interested in exploring it with us, senior?" Lin Jingyi asked in a soft voice. "A cave dwelling?" Li Tongya narrowed his eyes, suspicious of the offer. "How can there be such a good thing? We're pretty much strangers to each other. Can I really trust her? This person could not possibly be here to swindle me or kill me." "Oh, that sounds like incredible luck," Li Tongya commented with a chuckle. Lin Jingyi quickly sensed the skepticism and whispered, "We've already checked the cave dwelling. It belonged to a cultivator of the Foundation establishment realm from at least 200 years ago. We have the means to enter, but we lack one cultivator of the Qi cultivation realm." Li Tongya laughed. "You're seeking my help because a group of cultivators of the embryonic breathing realm like you can't break the formation of the cave dwelling?" he asked. Amused, he merely stared at her in silence and was ready to walk away. "Not exactly," Lin Jingyi replied with an awkward smile. Before continuing, "We already have 2 cultivators of the Qi cultivation realm. We're just one short of entering this cave dwelling," she explained. After hearing that statement, Li Tongya was slightly more convinced and agreed to sit down with Lin Jingyi to further discuss the matter. They found a bamboo building and ordered a cup of tea before continuing their discussion. Lin Jingyi then explained, "My husband and I have been active in the Mushroom Forest Plain, and some years ago, it was invaded by the Golden Tang Gate. Since then, that area has been deserted, and the market there is no longer operating. Since my husband has attained the Qi cultivation realm, we decided to venture westward to explore Moongaze Lake. We didn't expect that the drought would hit Moongaze Lake when we arrived. The water had receded a few miles, which exposed a cave dwelling in the lake. After being submerged for hundreds of years, the cave dwelling showed some defects that allowed my husband and I to notice it. We've cast a concealment spell there before coming here to seek help from others," she elaborated. "I see." Li Tongya nodded slowly in understanding. "Why me?" he asked down his eyes. Lin Jingyi hesitated before responding. "Because of your relatively low cultivation level. My husband is only at the 2nd heavenly layer of the Qi cultivation realm, and the person we found a few days ago was only at the 3rd heavenly layer. We've witnessed enough ugly sides of cultivators, so we hope to find someone with a similar cultivation background." "I see," Li Tongya replied, taking a sip of his tea. "Is it your husband waiting outside?" Li Tongya had already noticed someone waiting outside and decided to point it out. Lin Jingyi nodded, then called out to the man. The person then entered as he was summoned, cupping his fist as soon as he approached. "I'm Su Yanping. It's a pleasure to meet you, Brother Tongya," he greeted respectfully. The man was quite good-looking and seemed to be in his 50s. Li Tongya returned the gesture. No need for such formalities. Su Yanping nodded and straightened up before speaking. "We've been waiting here for over 10 days. If Brother Tongya hadn't shown up, we would have had no choice but to seek help from nearby clans. The mountain gate formations of those clans are tightly guarded. Who knows how many Qi cultivators there are? We're reluctant to approach them unless absolutely necessary." Lin Jingyi added, Tongya decided to waste no time. "Take a profound scenery spiritual oath," he demanded. Su Yanping nodded before performing a series of hand seals and repeated what Lin Jingyi had said earlier. As he performed the final hand seal, he muttered solemnly, "In the name of the profound scenery, I swear that." All that was said is true. Li Tongya listened to every word carefully. Upon detecting no omissions in the details and seeing that Su Yanping's powerful aura remained unchanged, some of his doubt had dissipated. "When are we departing?" he asked. "Right now," the couple replied eagerly. However, before they set off, Lin Jingyi turned to face Li Tongya. "I'll have to ask you to take an oath that you won't harm us. Though the profound scenery spiritual oath is primarily for safeguarding secrets and confirming truths and might not be entirely foolproof, it would still offer us some peace of mind." Fine. Li Tongya then took the oath as well, wasting no time. Once that was done, they then rode the wind along with Su Yongping. Observing the man's slightly mottled true essence, Li Tongya could tell that Su Yongping had absorbed various unrefined qi and felt slightly relieved. Conversely, the couple also noticed Li Tongya's clear and bright true essence. This prompted them to look at each other, exchanging a bitter smile. Meanwhile, in Lijiang Town, Chun Erniu was 70 this year, with a head full of gray hair. Having lived twice the age of most farmers, his eyes had turned cloudy from old age, and everyone in Lijiang Town called him Grandpa. He sat restlessly in his chair, haunted by nightmares brought on by the dry weather that reminded him of the huge sparrow that descended upon his hometown on that fateful day. When Lichuanka village was successfully recovered, Chun Erniu went off to search for his son, Chun Sanshu. He never found any sign of him, apart from a tooth and a puddle of blood. The locals all claimed that Chun Sanshue had been captured by those from Mount Yu and taken to the west. Chun Erniu merely snorted coldly, but still, he followed the horse's tracks and searched in the tall weeds by the road until he came across a puddle of dried blood. Upon parting the tall weeds of the roadside, he discovered a heartbreaking scene before him and cried out in anguish. His eldest son, Chun Sanshue, had met a tragic end. The arid conditions proved challenging for Chun Sanshue's children, leaving the old man to oversee the vigil beside his son's body most of the time during the funeral. I wonder if Donghe will make it home safely. Chun Erniu's frown deepened as he worried about his own. As he pondered, a commotion outside the courtyard caught his attention. A clamorous crowd was making a racket, their loud cries and shouts causing him to shudder. Moving to the entrance of the village with the support of his cane, Chun Erniu found a crowd gathered. In their midst, a group of wretched, mud-covered men kneeled on the ground, surrounded by mournful wails. He's back. Chun Erniu tried his best to straighten up and finally caught a glimpse of Li Xianxian and Chen Dong, Li Xianxian, who had already grown a light beard, stared incredulously at the Mount Yu men in front of him. Say that again? He's been killed by a curse. We couldn't even bring his body back. Li Xianxian froze for a few moments before tears flowed like streams from his eyes, leaving streaks all the way to his neck. Donghe, ascend the mountain with me. The rest of you go home first. Li Xianxian had covered his face for a long time in silence before he could finally squeeze the words out of his mouth. Chen Donghe's face was also stained with tears and had a pained expression. The crowd silently parted away for them and watched them leave in silence. Family head, Chun Donghe addressed Li Xianxian softly, snapping him back to his senses. Li Xianxian looked at the ebony bow in his hand and could not stop his tears. Call me young family head, Li Xianxian replied, choking back tears as he wiped them away, stepping onto the stone path and clutching the bow tightly. The two of them walked in silence with their heads bowed for a while before they ran into Li Xianfeng, who hurriedly descended down the mountain. Li Xianfeng froze when he spotted the ebony bow in Li Xuanchuan's hand. No. How can this be? He cried out as realization struck him. Tears quickly welled up in Li Xuanfeng's eyes as he viciously snatched the bow and yelled, Who did it? Chen Donghe felt even worse at the sight of more members of the Li family. He was killed by Mount Yu's curse. He whispered hoarsely. Li Xianfeng opened his mouth but could not utter a single word. He looked at Li Xianxian, whose face was full of tears, and slumped on a rock, the strength seemingly gone from his legs. How despicable. Li Xianfeng gritted his teeth as tears finally streamed down his face. Chapter 109. Exploration. Li Tongya soared into the air with the couple and flew out of the market, heading southward for several hours. He was not afraid of sneak attack or siege from these rogue cultivators. After all, the cultivation technique practiced by the rogue cultivators was only of grade 1 quality, having consumed various unrefined qi. Even if 3 or 5 rogue cultivators surrounded him, they would not be able to hold him back, especially with his superior river true essence. Li Tongya decided to assess the situation when they arrived. As they traveled, Li Tongya carefully discussed details with the couple. He discovered that the cave dwelling they sought was located on the south shore of Moongaze Lake, more than 200 miles away from Lichuanka village. The twists of fate in this world are truly unpredictable. Our family has been farming the south shore for decades, yet we never stumbled upon this cave. Su Yongping and his wife simply landed on this small continent in the lake for a rest, and by chance, they encountered this valuable discovery during the Great Drought. While silently caught in his thoughts, Li Tongya spotted an ordinary-looking man seated on the jagged rocks ahead, with a long saber resting on his knees. He seemed to be meditating. Brother Zhang. Su Yongping landed and called out with a smile. Cupping his fists, the man turned to face Su Yongping. This is Brother Zhang Yun, a qi cultivator who has attained the 3rd heavenly layer and is quite knowledgeable about formations. He just arrived at Moongaze Lake a few days ago to visit the market and has kindly agreed to assist us, Su Yongping quickly explained. Zhang Yun quickly got up and cupped his fist respectfully, silently observing Li Tongya's river true essence. Su Yongping proceeded to introduce Li Tongya to him. In return, Li Tongya cupped his fist in respect. As he observed Zhang Yun's bright and thorough true essence and listened to his claims of expertise in formations, Li Tongya secretly evaluated him. I suspect this person isn't just a rogue cultivator. There's no Zhang family in this region, and if he isn't using a false name, he likely has connections to the 3 sects and 7 gates. While Li Tongya remained vigilant, Zhang Yun continued to explain patiently. Though his excitement was evident, he pointed toward the water beside the small continent. During your absence, I studied this cave dwelling. It appears to belong to a cultivator of the Foundation establishment realm, dating back at least 200 to 300 years, he explained upon. Hearing this, Su Yangping's eyes lit up with excitement as he exclaimed, "That's rare indeed." Zhang Yun nodded. "I've heard that in ancient times, Moongaze Lake was known as the Great Moon Pool, spanning an area of 3,000 miles and was abundant with mountain pool spiritual qi. In fact, this was where the Moonlight Origin Mansion used to be located. There were numerous cave dwellings, but as the landscape changed, the lake gradually dried up, leaving only the present Moongaze Lake." He spoke, his eyes unreadable. Unable to contain her curiosity, Lin Jingyi eagerly asked, "Do you know how to get us inside, Brother Zhang?" "Of course." Zhang Yun nodded confidently. The group performed a series of hand seals and cast water avoidance spell on themselves before stepping into the water, stopping at a break in the riverbed. With a swift motion of his long saber, Zhang Yun revealed numerous patterns on the stone wall, followed by the emergence of a dazzling white formation. Zhang Yun reacted quickly and performed another hand seal, shooting out 3 long and thin jade wedges, each nailing into the formation. With a strong tug, 3 long and thin glowing white chains materialized in his hands, each connected to the jade wedges. "Take these, fellow Taoists," he instructed as he tossed out 2 chains to the other 2 men with him. Together, they poured their mana into the jade wedges. This guy really sure knows a thing or two. Li Tongya felt as though he had broadened his horizon as he channeled his mana through his hand. He grew more convinced that Zhang Yun had an extraordinary background, and his presence here could possibly be calculated. Li Tongya began meticulously scanning the surroundings around him, searching for potential escape routes. With heightened caution, he made a conscious effort to conserve his mana. After a full day of channeling mana, they finally saw the silver formation begin to flicker as night fell. After a slow night, the formation finally shattered, revealing the dark abyss that was the entrance to the cave dwelling. Yes, a huge amount of lake water rushed in. They swiftly cast a few water avoidance spells at the entrance to block it. Standing before the dark entrance, the 4 hesitated. A silent exchange ensued, their eyes meeting in a moment of mutual hesitation. In each other's gazes, they discerned the same shade of uncertainty. "Shall I go first?" Zhang Yun offered, brandishing a light yellow wooden shield from his storage bag. Su Yangping looked at the Dharma weapon in his hand from behind him, then followed silently behind Li Tongya with a serious look on his face. After only a few steps into the cave, a foul stench invaded their senses, immediately causing the couple to gag. Li Tongya, who had been holding his breath since entering the cave, remained unaffected and unfazed. He silently glanced at Su Yangping, and the two immediately recognized the vigilant look in each other's eyes. Their true essences surged, poised for action at a moment's notice. Su Yangping seems to have doubts about Zhang Yun's true intentions. If he was indeed working with Zhang Yun to deceive me, he wouldn't get Lin Jingyi involved in the first place. Looks like he has sensed that something must be off, hence becoming on guard. If in response to his thoughts, Su Yangping's voice echoed in Li Tongya's mind. It was transmitted through his spiritual sense, and his voice was tinged with apprehension. "Brotherly, I fear this man may not be an ordinary rogue cultivator. Jingyi, and I must have misjudged him. I fear this won't end well for us." Zhang Yun surveyed the cave dwelling ahead of them, the glow of the spell in his hand illuminating every corner of the cave. Within the cavern, a wide space unfolded. At its center stood a towering crystal column, adorned with the coiled skeleton of a massive snake. Among the eerie white bones and fangs, a lone blood-red orb was suspended inside its jaws. The orb hovered gently, emitting a faint crimson light that contrasted starkly against the pristine white lance embedded in the ground, its silver gleam casting an ethereal glow throughout the cave. The spiritual qi within the cave dwelling was as rich as in the cave dwelling on Mount Meiche. This cavern, spanning several acres, seemed to stretch endlessly into the depths, its atmosphere tinged with an overwhelming yin qi. "Oh, it seems we've stumbled upon a demon general's lair," Zhang Yun exclaimed, kicking aside decayed bones before turning back to address Li Tongya and the couple with disappointment. "I thought this would be a cave dwelling that belonged to a cultivator of the Foundation establishment realm, but it seems like it belongs to a serpent demon instead." Su Yangping and the others shared in Zhang Yun's disappointment. Demons of Foundation establishment realm have taken form, and often possess knowledge in formations and alchemy. However, demons were notorious for their lack of inheritance, preferring to consume spirit items rather than passing them down to others. This meant that there would not be much left for them to discover. There were countless little snakes in this cave, but all of them had been preyed upon by the demon and turned into sustenance for its cultivation. Zhang Yun remarked as they navigated through the labyrinth of snake remains. The group explored the entirety of the cave. All of the remains, bones, and ashes in there belonged to either humans or animals. Their belongings, including their storage pouches, had vanished. Zhang Yun muttered as he scanned the surroundings with his spiritual sense. From the ashes, 2 jade slips emerged. After a brief inspection of them, he tossed them aside in disappointment. What a poor demon. It must have exchanged all its treasures into spirit items and spirit elixirs to aid in breaking through to the Purple Mansion realm. The jade slips have been sealed. Since the demon couldn't sell them, they were left here buried in the ashes. Zhang Yun explained as he turned around to face his companions. He chuckled and continued. The Purple Mansion realm is no easy feat to achieve. What are the contents of those 2 jade slips, Brother Zhang? Su Yangping asked inquisitively as he cupped his fist in respect. Zhang Yun shot him a glance before replying. One of them is the Blood Dharma Manual for my sect, the Golden Feather Sect, while the other is the long-lost River Mountain Sutra of the Lingyu Gate after it was destroyed. You'll need the secret seal of the Golden Feather Sect to unlock the first one, and a secret technique to unlock the other one. Both of you should just give up on them. Chapter 110. Exploration 2. Su Yangping exchanged dismayed glances with his wife as Li Tongya withdrew to a safer area, his hand tightening around the hilt of his sword. Faint glimmers of white light were prancing around it, hinting at the latent power of the celestial moon/technique that was ready to be unleashed at any given moment. Do not be so alarmed, Brother Shao, Zhang Yun said as he smiled at Li Tongya, carefully eyeing his sword that was already humming with power in its sheath. I'm familiar with the River One Qi technique of the Shao family. It was my father who personally bestowed it upon them. Li Tongya's face betrayed a look of surprise before he quickly masked it with a quick regain of his composure. Is your purpose here solely to retrieve the Blood Dharma Manual, Brother Zhang? He asked, an eyebrow arched. Not really. Zhang Yun's expression faltered slightly. Actually, I was sent by my master to search for a cave dwelling. I had no idea Brother Shao was seeking the River Mountain Sutra. My intrusion was unintentional, he explained. Li Tongya was taken aback by this revelation, his mind racing. His expression betrayed his feelings of unease. I spent over a decade searching for the whereabouts of this cave dwelling. I never anticipated being preempted by this couple. When I saw Brother Zhang, I assumed it was because your sect also had an interest in this item, he interjected. Zhang Yun waved his hands dismissively. Nonsense. With the bond between our families, how could the Golden Feather Sect harbor any desire for the River Mountain Sutra? Su Yangping and his wife were left bewildered by the conversation. Caught between the conflicting agendas of 2 powerful factions, they felt trapped, perspiration beading on their brows as they realized they had unwittingly stumbled into a dangerous situation. Damn it, Li Tongya is also a disciple of the sect. Now, we've become pawns in their game. The couple silently edged backward, ready to make a hasty escape. However, their small movements caught Zhang Yun's attention, prompting him to turn and fix them with a sly smile. I'll deal with Brother Zhao's problem first, Zhang Yun exclaimed with a laugh as he swung his blade towards Su Yangping. Su Yangping's hair stood on end as he quickly grabbed Lin Jingyi and made an attempt to retreat. Unfortunately for him, Zhang Yun had practiced at least a grade 3 cultivation method and had consumed pure spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Although Su Yangping had attained the qi cultivation realm, he practiced common cultivation methods. Since he possessed no decent qi gathering method, he had consumed various unrefined qi. It was no surprise that he was no match for Zhang Yun's prowess in a swift and ruthless display like Li Tongya. When he murdered the qi cultivator of the Ji family back then, Zhang Yun decapitated Su Yangping with a series of slashes, ignoring Lin Jingyi's pleas for mercy. He soon turned his attention to her, and with another slash, she fell to the ground, lifeless. These rogue cultivators are truly worthless, Zhang Yun sneered as he turned around. Although Li Tongya's face remained composed, Zhang Yun's actions chilled Li Tongya to the bone. As Zhang Yun silently picked up the couple's storage pouches, Li Tongya could not help but reflect on the power held by the 3 sects and 7 gates in the world of immortal cultivation. Without the authentic technique Jinger brought home from the sect, I could have been killed by someone else, like these 2 rogue cultivators. Zhang Yun suddenly turned toward Li Tongya with a proposition. I guess the cultivation method is settled. As for these inner core and Dharma artifacts, who's been picked first? Without waiting for a response from Li Tongya, a cruel sparkle lit up his eyes. Why don't we settle this with a duel? Saber against sword. Winner takes the pick of the loot, he exclaimed. Li Tongya had seen Zhang Yun's skill when he decapitated Su Yangping earlier and was aware that Zhang Yun's techniques were not any superior to his profound water sword technique and river one qi technique. Besides, he also had the celestial moon slash technique, which was packed with explosive power. I mustn't back down at this moment. With a confident smirk, he drew his sword, unleashing a burst of white light that had been contained in his sheath. Sounds good, He replied with a dangerous smile. Yes, as soon as he drew his sword, a white sword chi flew toward Zhang Yun, causing him to cry out in alarm and surprise. Hey, that's cheating, he exclaimed. However, he was able to react fast enough, releasing the saber chi he had been storing for quite some time. It clashed against the sword chi, creating a thunderous noise that caused their clothing to flutter and rustle loudly. Tonya staggered slightly under the force of the impact, but managed to dissipate it quickly. Zhang Yun, however, remained steadfast despite taking a direct hit. He stifled a grunt, indicating that he had sustained minor internal injuries. Nevertheless, he chuckled. You've backed off? Take your cultivation method, and I'll take the Peak Foundation Establishment Realm Demon's inner core. You can have this Dharma weapon of Foundation Establishment Realm. Reluctant to argue further, Li Tonya simply nodded. Fine, my mission is already complete as long as I can retrieve this cultivation method from my elder anyway. He replied with a shrug of his shoulders. Both of them then collected their items before exiting the cave. That sword technique of yours is quite impressive. Li Tonya was about to offer a modest response, but Zhang Yun quickly spoke again before he could respond. The Golden Feather Sect's promise to the Taoist master shooting still stands. Once that old fart, Qi Wei, dies, the Shao family will be backed up by the Golden Feather Sect. So please, give more consideration to the matter. Li Tonya was instantly stricken with horror as his mind reeled with the revelation. Taoist master shooting? Shao shooting has already attained the Purple Mansion realm? No wonder the Golden Feather Sect treats the Shao family with such deference. What's that promise about? If Qi Wei, the old ancestor of the Azure Pond sect, dies, the sect's influence will likely diminish greatly. What schemes are the Shao family and the Golden Feather Sect plotting? Zhang Yun blinked and continued in a low voice. Even if you're not truly loyal to the Shao family, it doesn't matter. With a few Foundation Establishment cultivators ready to unite, turmoil will inevitably ensue sooner or later. Li Tonya shook his head and chuckled. Brother Zhang, you jest. With a laugh, Zhang Yun patted his brocade pouch and departed on his flying shuttle, leaving Li Tonya to contemplate his words. Wary that Zhang Yun was still around the vicinity, Li Tonya decided to sit and cultivate until nightfall. As darkness enveloped the land, he utilized the Qi restraining technique and flew toward Lixia Prefecture before circling back to the Li residence. However, as he flew over Mount Lijing, he noticed a sea of white below him. A sense of foreboding gripped him as he descended toward the mountain. The courtyard was decorated in white, and he saw Li Xianxian clad in mourning attire. What happened? He asked carefully. Li Xianxian shivered. He could not even speak at the sight of Li Tonya and merely fell to his knees onto the ground. With trembling hands, Li Xianxian handed over the ebony bow and spoke. A few days ago, Chen Donghe and the others returned, saying that uncle had been killed by a curse. He choked out between sobs at Tonya froze, and the joy from acquiring a new cultivation method and Dharma artifact instantly dissipated. His fears and premonitions had finally been proven true. I understand, he murmured softly before turning away to hide his emotions. The two stood on the mountain for the longest time, each not saying a word. It took a while before Li Tonya broke the silence again. Go get the clothes he usually wore and bury them in the family mausoleum, alongside your grandfather and father. Li Xianxian nodded solemnly, and Li Tonya wiped away a tear before issuing another instruction. Make sure everything is done in proper order. Leave a space in the center for me. Understood. Chapter 111. Recovered Mirror Shard. In the year 216 of the Great Calendar, the barbarian lord of Mount Yu, Jin Ixi, advanced eastward, plundered the towns of Lichuan and Lijing, and broke through the mountain gate. Jintian delicately held the brush with fair and slender fingers, meticulously jotting down notes on the silk fabric page of a book. Save for the occasional pause to move her fingers and calculate the dates. Father was trapped by Mount Yu, invaded westward into Great Juding, and ravaged 15 villages. The barbarian lord, fearing his might, resorted to foul curses to assassinate him. Father had succumbed to a gruesome fate, coughing blood and spewing forth locusts. He breathed his last at the tender age of 39. The mantle of household responsibilities then fell upon the shoulders of the eldest son of the first uncle, Xianxian. Jingtian sighed mournfully after writing this paragraph, her white clothes billowing gently in the breeze. Sitting beside her, Li Tonya raised his head to observe her continued writing in the book. In the year 217 of the Great Calendar, the fourth month of the summer, there was a great drought. The 15 Mount Yu villages were affected by locusts that came from the south and covered the sky. Well done, Li Tonya murmured as he nodded approvingly. He had intended to start documenting the family history several years ago, but various family matters had kept everyone in the major sect occupied. Fortunately, Li Jingtian, being a direct descendant of the family, had the time, and so the task was handed over to her. Jingtian dipped her brush into the ink and set aside the completed writing. As she prepared another silk page to continue on, the sound of a report outside the courtyard caught their attention. Chen Donghe seeks an audience. Guomin. Chen Dongha entered the courtyard with a determined stride. Clad in the same white clothes, he glanced at Li Jingtian, who was behind the curtain, before cupping his fist. I have something important to report. He hesitated. It had been several months since his return to the village, and Li Tongya had been difficult to meet. He gritted his teeth in contemplation before finally speaking. The family had instructed that this matter should be reported to Senior Tongya alone. Li Jingtian raised her head, then gently set aside her brush and bowed respectfully before retreating from the room. Noticing the seriousness in Chen Dongha's demeanor, Li Tongya dismissed the attendants as well. It was only then that Chen Dongha finally produced a crystal-clear bead from his pocket, kneeling before Li Tongya. The family head has instructed that this bead must be personally delivered to your hands. I have not spoken of this to anyone else. Accepting the pearl, Li Tongya examined it closely. Encased within the crystal was a thumb-sized, pure white, diamond-shaped shard that sparkled in the sunlight. As Li Tongya was about to speak, the profound pearl talisman seed within his body trembled violently, causing his heart to skip a beat. He bit down on his tongue and swallowed his words. I understand. I'll remember all that you've done for us, he replied, feigning calmness. After dismissing Chen Dongha, Li Tongya clapped his storage pouch, only to realize the treasure would not be able to fit inside. Without any other choice, he concealed it in his chest pocket. Nodding to Li Jingtian, who had just re-entered the courtyard, he swiftly made his exit. Lu Jiangxin's divine sense had long been fixated on that treasure pearl, and as he observed Li Tongya hurrying to the backyard, he felt a profound connection with the shard. His heart raced with excitement. It seems like the mirror is only left with a bluish-gray frame. What seems like its reflective surface is merely the shiny sheen of the smooth frame. The mirror itself has long been shattered and lost. The shard in the bead Li Tongya was holding was actually one of the lost fragments of the mirror. The mirror itself was palm-sized, while the shard was the size of 2 fingernails, occupying 1/10 of its entire reflective surface. Lu Jiangxian resisted the urge to seize it and decided to wait silently in the backyard instead. As Li Tongya placed the precious pearl atop the altar reverently, Lu Jiangxian activated his mana. A blazing white light erupted from the mirror, and the bluish-gray mirror floated into the air. The 12 runes on the mirror's frame flashed one by one, and white light rippled across the mirror's surface like undulating water waves. A heavy pressure filled the courtyard, shocking Li Tongya and leaving him gasping for breath. Lu Jiangxian ingested the pearl, and the supreme profound light burst forth. The crystal-clear shell melted like ice meeting fire, transforming into a white mist, which turned out to be the talisman chi of Foundation Establishment Realm. As the mirror shards slowly fused into the frame, a profound sense of satisfaction and drowsiness washed over Lu Jiangxian. He focused on merging with the mirror shard, grabbing the talisman chi, and tossing it into Li Tongya's Xinyang mansion. All of a sudden, Lu Jiangxian saw stars appear before his eyes as several rows of large characters appeared. The top row was written in purposeful handwriting, with pale golden brush strokes, Deep Ocean Long Whale. The words in the row below it were written in dark gray brush strokes that conveyed the bitter coldness of iron and stone, exhausting life to achieve success. Back then, Li Xiangping had 3 types of talisman chi to choose from, while Li Tongya only had 2. It seemed the type of talisman chi was related to the recipient's talent, while the realm of the talisman chi determined the power of the ability. After sealing as Lu Jiangxian's divine sense delved into the words, he was able to feel the differences between the 2 talisman chi. The Deep Ocean Long Whale talisman could enhance the recipient's mana, deepening their true essence like the ocean and allowing for rapid recovery of mana. On the other hand, the other talisman enabled the user to exchange lifespan for mana, granting explosive strength but at the cost of longevity. Without hesitation, Lu Jiangxian chose the Deep Sea Long Whale talisman, hoping it would help Li Tongya live longer and also allow the profound pearl talisman seed in his body to mature several more decades before its retrieval. Besides, knowing Li Tongya, there was no way that man would sacrifice his lifespan to win. So naturally, the first talisman was the most practical choice. You should be able to reach greater heights now. Guard your home well, and I shall rest for a while. Lu Jiangxian murmured as he slowly drifted into a deep slumber. Li Tongya felt a white chi enter his brow, and a pale talisman chi materialized in his Xinyang mansion before 4 huge golden characters appeared. Deep Ocean Long Whale. White talisman? Before Li Tongya could react, the chakra in his chi-hai acupoint stirred, and his cultivation realm surged with the intensity of a volcanic eruption. 3rd heavenly layer. 4th heavenly layer. 5th heavenly layer. The deep pool in Li Tongya's chi-hai acupoint expanded violently, growing 5 or 6 times larger than its original size. Once brimming with true essence, Li Tongya was now left with a sensation that felt like only 20 or 30% of his cultivation remained. Li Tongya was so astonished that he could barely contain himself. What an unbelievable talisman chi! To think that there's such a talisman chi within this treasure pearl. The deep ocean long whale talisman is really powerful. He mumbled in utter shock and disbelief as he watched the bluish-gray mirror before him gradually lower onto the platform again. Li Tongya respectfully kneeled and bowed deeply 3 times. He then exited the courtyard and sat down cross-legged, then began to condense his true essence. Just as he settled down, he was nearly jolted awake from his meditative state. Although my chi high is now 5 or 6 times larger, the recovery speed of my true essence is more than 10 times faster. I thought it would take 8 or 10 hours to recover, but now it seems it won't even take 2 hours. Li Tongya tried to settle down again and completed his meditation for an hour, feeling the profound, true essence coursing through his body. I bet that the 3 past versions of myself combined can hardly take down the version I am now. They may even end up being exhausted to death by myself. He murmured quietly to himself. Barely able to contain his own excitement, he soared into the air, feeling his mood had lifted greatly. Chapter 112. Recovered Mirror Shard 2. The big cave dwelling in the lake is full of spiritual chi. Maybe I should send some people to patch it up when we have enough manpower to spare. It seems about an acre or 2 in size, like several cave dwellings on Mount Meche combined. It seems like we don't have to worry about cultivation space from now on. Tongya reached into his storage pouch. There were 50 spirit stones from the time he helped destroy the G family, along with the proceeds from selling items and accumulated surplus. This totaled to around 70 spirit stones. Clang, drawing out a long spear that emitted a chilling gleam from his storage pouch, Li Tongya inspected the Dharma artifact of the Foundation establishment realm he had obtained in the Snake's Cave. Faint electricity danced along its snow-white surface, causing Li Tongya's palms to tingle. Tongya smiled wryly. He was not skilled with spears, and on top of that, the Dharma artifact was of the Foundation establishment realm, which was too powerful for a chi cultivator to wield. Hence, it could only be left to collect dust in his storage pouch. Since the formation home hasn't been set up yet, I will just carry it around for now. Putting the spear away, Li Tongya retrieved another jade slip. This jade slip looked different from ordinary ones. It was entirely purple, chilling to the touch, and remarkably durable. Li Tongya was convinced that he would not even be able to scratch it if he were to use all his strength. According to what Zhang Yun said, this is the long-lost River Mountain Sutra from the destroyed Lingyu Gate. I wonder what kind of cultivation method this is. The jade slip had been sealed. Li Tongya attempted to access its contents with his spiritual sense, only to feel like he was going against an iron wall. He had no choice but to give up and wait until he could gather more information about it in the future. When he entered the front yard, Li Xianxian was engrossed in reading wooden slips. Li Tongya sat beside him quietly. How are things at home? Good. Li Xianxian nodded and replied without looking up. There are now around 1,200 vagrants from Mount Yu, and combined with the Mount Yu people that were already in the village, it gives a total of 5,000. The population under our rule has reached 30,000, with 10,000 in Lijiang Town alone. The Li family has more than 800 members, and the Yi family has over 3,000. Li Tongya glanced at the wooden slip in his hand and thought to himself, with such numbers, there'll likely be many individuals with spiritual orifices in the coming years. Keep an eye on them and ensure the Mount Yu people don't cause any trouble. Understood, Li Xianxian replied with affirmation. I've prohibited intermarriage between Mount Yu and our people. Women are only allowed to marry villagers, and men join the farming households. Those from Mount Yu don't have surnames, so there's a little aversion to changing them. In just 2 or 3 generations, there won't be any distinction between those from Mount Yu and our villagers. Excellent, Li Tongya said approvingly. He then let out a slight chuckle. I heard you have 6 concubines. He asked teasingly. Li Xianxian stammered and awkwardly nodded, his cheeks flushing instantly. That was from 2 years ago, when third uncle picked them for me, he stuttered shyly. It's good to expand the family. The major sex numbers are still too small, Li Tongya continued with a reassuring nod. Just don't overindulge yourself, and let that affect the progress of your cultivation. Li Xianxian nodded hastily. I can feel that I'm very close to condensing the Jade Capital Chakra. I can probably enter seclusion to break through to the 5th stage of the embryonic breathing realm soon. Li Tongya stood up and glanced at the setting sun outside the window. What did the messengers that were sent to the Lu and families report? They both brought back news. Both the Lu and families now rule over more than 20,000 people. One occupies Mount Huazhong, and the other occupies Mount Huaqian. Li Tongya carefully listened to this before replying. With the population under our rule about to exhaust available land for cultivation along with our population growth reaching its limit, let's keep an eye on these 2 families and wait for the right moment. Agreed, Li Xianxian replied with a nod in agreement. After a brief moment of contemplation, he added, there's one more thing though. Li Tongya frowned and asked, what is it? I think Donghe probably fancies Jingtian. Donghe. At this, Li Tongya's expression clouded momentarily with sorrow before responding. He's talented and of good character. However, with Xiangping just gone, This is not the time to discuss marriage. You should ask Jing Tian if she fancies anyone right now. Then we can discuss further. The night had grown deep, with the gentle moonlight casting a soothing glow over the stone path. The mountain breeze feeling particularly refreshing. Jing Tian lit a candle and settled down to read the records she had meticulously written over the past few days. However, her concentration was interrupted by a series of soft knocks on the door. It was a clan soldier who was stationed outside. "Young lady, the family head requests your presence in the main courtyard." Li Jingtian was taken aback before quickly realizing that Li Xianxian was the family head the clan soldier was referring to. She extinguished the candle on the desk and softly replied, "I understand." After gathering her belongings, she gently opened the door of her room. However, she was surprised to find a teenager standing outside. Her brow arched. "Donghe." Chun Donghe nodded nervously, his eyes darting around before speaking. "Jingtian, the family head sent me to fetch you." He croaked out. Li Jingtian furrowed her eyebrows slightly, puzzled. "Why did the family head send you? Did he mention anything specific?" she asked, curious. Chun Donghe gritted his teeth, clenching his hands nervously as he explained, The family head asked me if I wanted to be together with you." Li Jingtian's almond eyes slowly widened as she stared at him in shock. Only a single word escaped her slightly parted lips. The two stared at each other for a few seconds. Li Jingtian could already discern the answer in Chun Donghe's fiery gaze. She walked silently along the stone path, her heart heavy and hands cold, as if she already understood what awaited her. Chun Donghe also understood the situation from Li Jingtian's silence. His eyes, which were filled with longing and desire, were now like extinguished fire pits, turning cold like churned ash. With pursed lips, he sent Li Jingtian into the main courtyard and sat at the entrance. He stared blankly at the moon in the sky. Li Jingtian cautiously entered the main courtyard where only Li Xianxian was present, engrossed in reading a wooden slip. Unlike Li Xiangping, who preferred to sit in his seat at that spot, Li Xianxian often stood by the table as if there was someone else occupying the large chair, making him conscious of his actions. Jingtian. Li Xianxian glanced up and saw the answer in Li Jingtian's eyes. Despite this, he remained composed and warm as he asked, "What do you think of Donghe?" Li Jingtian noticed the hopeful anticipation in Li Xuanxuan's eyes. She understood that he wished to see such a capable aide as Chun Donghe married into the Li family, ensuring the continuation of such a valuable bloodline. Courageous, reliable, and talented. At 15, he's already at the third stage of the embryonic breathing realm and shows promise in reaching the qi cultivation realm. Li Jingtian calmly responded. Xianxian nodded approvingly. "Who among the men in the towns can compare to him? You should spend more time with him regularly." He continued in a low, reassuring voice. Jingtian listened to Li Xuanxuan's personal advice and then left the courtyard in a daze. Chun Donghe had already vanished from the entrance. Walking along the stone path, Li Jingtian suddenly felt a deep sense of insignificance and unease. She looked up at the bright moon. "How I wish I had a spiritual orifice as well." Chapter 113. Jianixi's Death. Jianixi, clad in leather and adorned with bird feathers, wielded an animal bone spear as he ascended the high platform. His aura was that of the Foundation establishment realm, heightened only by the brilliant sunrise that enveloped his figure. Illuminating him in a divine glow, a vast crowd of Mount Yu tribesmen kneeled devoutly beneath the platform, their eyes brimming with hope and anticipation. They believed that Jianixi, their king, would usher in a new era, putting an end to Mount Yu's century of chaos. However, contrasting with the fervent excitement of his subjects, Jianixi's eyes projected only ridicule and disdain. Standing rigidly atop the platform, he coldly surveyed the kneeling people of Mount Yu below him. "Jianixi, it's time," rasped the old shaman beside him, draped in a black robe. He wielded a scepter fashioned from a beast's head, exuding the aura of Peak Foundation establishment realm. His hoarse voice echoed in Jianixi's ears. "Don't delay this any longer. As long as you die peacefully, we will spare your people," the old shaman continued. His expression tinged with helplessness as he inwardly cursed those who had coerced him into this situation. It seems Jianixi has long sensed that something is amiss. No wonder they've been passing the buck to each other. "I've been in seclusion for too long and thought that this would be an easy task, but it seems that I have been mistaken. To coerce him into being a sacrificial lamb is no easy feat with no heir nor wife. His only concern is for the hundreds of thousands of Mount Yu. We can only use this to blackmail him. If he hadn't ascended this altar himself, we would have had to resort to force." Jianixi cast a contemptuous glance at him, tightening his grip on his spear. Slowly, he stepped forward tentatively, and the patterns on the high platform almost immediately began glowing red. "Old man, let me ask you, have you ever ruled over subjects and led an army before?" Jianixi asked without warning. The old shaman noticed the disdain on Jianixi's face. Gone was the helplessness he had exhibited a few days ago when he had to hold hundreds of thousands of Mount Yu people hostage. His heart raced with unease, and his hair stood on their end as he warned. Jianixi, think about the hundreds of thousands from Mount Yu and reconsider your action. Jianixi laughed, failing to conceal the anger and malice in his voice. The army is my lance. The people are my chariot. No one should die for their weapon, he snarled. The old shaman suddenly felt that something must be wrong the moment he heard this statement. He sensed the surging mana emanating from Jianixi's body, so powerful that it seemed capable of crushing even the profound scenery chakra itself. In a panic, he cried out, "Master!" Suddenly, the sky darkened as winds howled ominously. A massive skeletal hand descended from the heavens, aiming to suppress Jianixi's burgeoning power. But before it could even come close to touching a hair on Jianixi's body, a profound light from the east intercepted it, halting its advance. With a resounding crack, the 6 chakras in Jianixi's body shattered, along with the foundation of the great Tao. Crimson blood erupted from his form, and the old shaman's face paled in shock. "What do you want, woman?" Jianixi asked calmly as he discarded his armor. "I want you to live, great king." The scene shifted abruptly, and Jianixi exploded into a shower of blood before the Mount Yu tribesmen. Staining the altar a deep, bright red point, one of his eyeballs flew several feet away, coming to rest before a kneeling Mount Yu woman. The Mount Yu woman, with her child strapped to her back, reacted as though she had been bitten by a snake. She leaped up immediately with a shriek before picking it up and holding it in her hands shakily. Her face flashed between shades of green and white, and a second later, she coughed and spurted out fresh blood. A heavy silence blanketed the earth, which stifled the army and the people below, rendering them speechless. Dark clouds gathered swiftly in the sky and were accompanied by lightning, while gusts of wind swept every corner of the earth. A murmur echoed in the old shaman's ears. He immediately kneeled down, trembling uncontrollably. Despite his formidable cultivation, he felt no sense of security. In that moment, only despair filled the old shaman's heart. It's not an old friend. It's a newly promoted cultivator of the Purple Mansion realm. Who is it? The thunderous, angry shouts reverberated in the ears of the old shaman. Suddenly, without any warning, the Mount Yu Chi cultivators on the altar combusted into a rain of red flesh. The high platform, which was constructed of mud and bricks, crumbled immediately. This had a chain effect, sending rolling mud, sand, and gravel cascading down from the platform. The muddy and earthy atmosphere filled the entire great Jueting in mere seconds. Who taught him how to shatter his cultivation and disintegrate his body? Who? A black-robed, middle-aged man stood in the void, and the old shaman remained on his knees, covered in dirt. He raised his hand, his expression filled with tyranny. "How many years has it been since one has been able to inflict such a significant loss upon myself?" His majestic aura reverberated in all directions, causing all the Mount Yu tribesmen gathered in the great Jueting to tremble. "Master, that was a profound light spell. It's most likely the work of the Devil Gate." The old shaman's back ran cold as he stammered out a reply. Then, he heard the middle-aged cultivator of the Purple Mansion realm coldly declare, "Azure Chi Devil Gate, huh? When I was at the peak of my power back then, it was just a small sect guarding a broken mountain gate. And now, they dare to challenge me." The man immediately departed on his shuttle as soon as he was done speaking, leaving the old shaman kneeling in silence for a long time before he finally found the courage to lift his head up again. Tens of thousands of Mount Yu inhabitants remained crouched on the ground, weeping softly. Tens of thousands of incense transformed into light gray resentment chi that floated over the great Jueting. "Great king!" The Mount Yu inhabitants cried and kneeled around the brown eyeball, the only thing left of their leader. However, their attention was drawn to the sound of rustling wings slowly approaching from the distance. "Locusts! Locusts!" The guards on the city wall shouted these words loudly as a huge swarm of gray and black locusts appeared in the distance, darkening the sky as they flew freely above the great Jueting, consuming all the resentment chi that had condensed during the drought. Buzz, the locusts flew into people, causing raw pain as the Mount Yu's inhabitants cried out in agony, trampling and pushing each other, attempting to avoid the passage of the locusts. Hell was let loose in the entire great Jueting. "Great king!" Seeing the masses of people rapidly surging, the woman carrying her child hastily lifted the boy high and pushed him onto a low boulder with all her might. She was just in time, and almost immediately she was engulfed by the surging crowd, reduced into a pile of blood, flesh, and broken bones on the ground. Amidst the overwhelming sound of buzzing locust wings, the golden morning sun was obscured by dark clouds, plunging the northern foothills into darkness once again. Moisture filled the air, and the towns echoed with joyful laughter as villagers carried various containers around, eagerly awaiting the torrential downpour. "It's finally raining." The sorrow on Li Xuanxuan's face dissipated as he smiled, observing the townspeople bustling about. The prolonged drought, which had lasted 8 months, had finally ended with rain. Beside him, Li Xianling remained silent, his expression also filled with joy. The blade in his hand glowed gray, indicating his success with the profound water sword aura. I Jingtian sat by the window with a smile, watching the raindrops patter onto the stone road. Chen Donghe stood beside her, gazing at her quietly. Donghe. Li Jingtian spoke suddenly, surprising Chen Donghe, who blushed almost instantly as he was caught off guard. Huh, he stammered hastily. Tell me about what my father did in the West, she requested. Chen Donghe's expression brightened, and he began recounting events from the West. Li Jingtian listened quietly, occasionally nodding. Meanwhile, the majestic rain poured into every corner with the villagers rejoicing in the heavy downpour, each wearing joyful smiles. Li Tongya soared through the clouds, his brow visibly relaxed. Excellent rain, truly excellent, he remarked, casting a glance to the west where the suffocating aura had vanished. I suppose Jianixi is dead. We'll have to wait for the news before we can finally breathe a sigh of relief. Having an enemy like Jianixi always kept one on edge. If Jianixi were to perish, the 15 villages of Mount Yu would be no match for Li Tongya. Even with one hand tied behind his back, he could beat all the Qi cultivators, though what's more, with the blood sacrifice made. I wonder how many Qi cultivators remain among Mount Yu. Regrettably, the territorial boundaries set by the cultivator of Purple Mansion Realm on Mount Yu and Azure Pond Sect prevented Li Tongya from expanding his domain, as it had annexed nearby villages. As he descended into the courtyard, Li Tongya was greeted by Lu Rochuan's welcoming smile. You're back, my dear. Lu Rochuan had been cultivating for many years, yet she had only been able to reach the third stage of the embryonic breathing realm. Her natural talent was not particularly remarkable, and she had been practicing a grade 1. Chapter 113. Jianixi's death technique of the embryonic breathing realm, which hindered her progress. Looking at her now, there were already strands of white hair from her temples. Emmachung, Li Tongya responded gently. He and Lu Rochuan had spent nearly 20 years together and knew each other very well. Holding her hand, he noticed a hint of concern in Lu Rochuan's expression. What's wrong? He asked, offering a reassuring smile. Lu Rochuan lowered her gaze, her eyes tinged with sadness. I've selected a few concubines for you. They're waiting outside. Confused, Li Tongya waved off the women and chuckled. What were you thinking? He asked with tenderness. Lu Rochuan explained softly. I know my talents are limited, and I fear I may never advance to the Qi cultivation realm. I won't be able to stay by your side forever, and Xianling is our only son. Li Tongya hesitated, grappling with the unspoken truth that the distribution of the clan's resources had always favored individuals with better talents, leaving Lu Rochuan neglected due to her modest abilities. It seemed unlikely that she would achieve a breakthrough in her cultivation without a significant change. Li Tongya began, struggling to find the right words. His principles made it difficult for him to prioritize his wife's needs over those of the clan. However, before he could voice his thoughts, he noticed Lu Rochuan gently shaking her head. That's not what I mean. I'm not good with fighting and lack innate talent. Even if I were to attain the Qi cultivation realm, it would likely be futile. I would never dare to squander the clan's resources. All I desire is for you to have more heirs. Moved by her words, Li Tongya shook his head in response. There's no need to say any more. I come from a humble farming background. Taking multiple wives and concubines isn't my style. Xianling is an obedient and level-headed child, thanks to your guidance. I have yet to even properly express my gratitude. Before Lu Rochuan could say anything else, Li Tongya gently silenced her by leaning in and whispering in her ear. If you wish for another child, then let's get to work. Chapter 114. Big Fox Li Qiuyang returned to the town several months before his father, Li Chengfu, passed away. The funeral was relatively grand, with representatives from the main family coming to offer condolences. Li Qiuyang personally thanked each guest before spending time alone in the funeral hall, quietly reflecting in front of his father's coffin. His relationship with his older brothers was overly formal and respectful, and it was a little uncomfortable for him. Li Chengfu's death had seemed to be peaceful, holding on just long enough to see Li Qiuyang return before passing away, quietly in his bed. It was almost like a relief to him to say his final goodbye before his last breath, grasping Li Qiuyang's hand tenderly. Looking at the funeral hall draped in white cloth, Li Qiuyang faintly remembered when he was 7 when Li Chengfu, upon hearing that the main family was testing the children for spiritual orifices, took him and left the house without a word. The two walked along the stone path for a while, and he asked his father, Dad, where are we going? To seek immortals. Li Chengfu chuckled. After returning to the family and reverting to the Li surname, the villagers and the members of the Yi family came one after another to curry favor. Li Chengfu, keen and capable, not only kept his brothers in line and ensured that they never caused trouble for Li Qiuyang, but also made himself useful in the clan, his contributions making this branch prosper day by day. One day, Li Chengfu had simply drunk too much. When I was little and catching fat mice in the fields, I could tell there were 3 smart people in the village. One was Li Muqian, the other was Chun Erniu. One was fiercely calm, The other was clever and capable. He chuckled softly in a drunken stupor. And the third? Li Qiuyang asked with a smile. It's Yi Chengfu. Li Chengfu laughed heartily with his eyes blurred with drunkenness. The wine bowl, shaking violently with every hearty chuckle, Li Qiuyang was suddenly jolted awake from his memory flashbacks and glanced once more at Li Chengfu, who was lying in the coffin. Just then, a little child ran in, bouncing around with a white cloth tied around his forehead. He looked up at Li Qiuyang with eyes that were brimming with tears. Daddy, holding his young son in his arms. Li Qiuyang's thoughts wandered. All 8 of you lack a spiritual orifice. Where then does the hope for our lineage lie? As your father, I can only ensure a life of wealth for you. Without a spiritual orifice, you might even pass before I do. He murmured these words to himself, and his eyes were clouded with an unreadable expression. Just as he spoke these words to the child, a clan soldier entered, bowing deeply. Clan uncle, the family head summons you. Li Qiuyang quickly stood up, tidied his clothes, and hurriedly made his way to Mount Lijing. Walking along the stone path, he encountered a massive snake corpse sprawled on the ground that had intricate patterns. What a long creature! Li Qiuyang exclaimed in admiration. Without waiting for Li Xianxian to speak, he immediately bent down and began sealing the demonic creature with a spirit sealing technique. How is your cultivation progressing, clan uncle? Li Xianxian asked with a beaming smile. I've condensed the Azure Essence Chakra and attained the 4th stage of the embryonic cultivation realm. Li Qiuyang chuckled fondly in response while Li Xianfeng, who was polishing his bow, remained silent in his white clothes. Clearly in a somber mood, that a clan soldier, panting heavily and drenched in sweat, rushed up and whispered urgently to Li Xianxian, Family head, news has arrived from the mountains beyond. Jianixi is dead, assassinated during the grand ceremony on Mount Yu. Li Xianxian was momentarily stunned as he processed the news, and moments later joy sprang into his eyes. He quickly stood up and said to the two, Jianixi is dead. To think he was assassinated at the grand ceremony. Now, we can finally sleep in peace. A great relief indeed. Both men were taken aback, but Li Xianfeng was exceptionally stoic, not even blinking at the news. That was an easy way out for him. His voice was cold, almost disbelieving. Li Qiuyang's expression turned complex as he quietly said, During my time in the Mount Yu territories, I saw how much the people revered him. How could someone so beloved be assassinated? Li Xianxian nodded, taking over the conversation with a question. Moreover, he was at least at the peak of Qi cultivation realm. Who else but a cultivator of the Foundation establishment realm could kill him? There are many doubts. The waters run deep. What about second uncle? He might be the only one who would know the crux of it. Li Xianxian asked, looking up. He went to slay demons. Lu Xianfeng replied with a shake of his head. Li Tongya followed the mountain's veins toward a location he remembered, and under a cliff, he found a large banyan tree with whitening leaves. It stood proudly on the slope with its white leaves scattering all over the ground, creating a patchwork of white. Having found the spot from his memory, he indeed saw a large, red fox sound asleep beside the tree. He stopped dead in his tracks, and the fox's ears perked up sharply. Squinting to focus its beady eyes on him, Li Tongya watched quietly for a while. This demon was around the 5th heavenly layer of the Qi cultivation realm. He had seen it before when he was seeking a talisman Qi offering. Back then, he was intimidated by its aura from a distance, but now, with his increased cultivation, he thought it a good opportunity to test his sword skills. The fox's eyes were quite lively, looking at the sword in his hand and then licking its paws. It opened its mouth and spoke slowly, much to his surprise. I've never eaten humans. Li Tongya was momentarily stunned, scanning the fox with his spiritual sense, confirming that it was indeed at the 5th heavenly level of the Qi cultivation realm and not at the Foundation establishment realm. It was his first time encountering a demon with such spiritual intelligence, as well as the ability to refine bones. Fellow Taoist, I merely wish to spar with you, that's all. Noticing that the fox was tongue-tied, Li Tongya could not help but laugh, raising his hand to strike at the fox. The fox leaped up immediately on the spot, extending its paws to block his attack, and for a moment, the sound of metal clashing rang out in the silence. After dozens of moves between the man and the fox, Li Tongya slowly gained confidence, steadily creating distance to unleash sword Qi for slicing. The demon fox was clearly caught off guard by this attack, but still managed to block several blows of his sword Qi before opening its mouth to spit out a series of fox fires. The fox fire was blazing, red and headed directly toward Li Tongya, who stumbled several steps backward in shock. Thankfully, Li Tongya was protected by his true essence. The fox fire, following him like a determined shadow, sizzled against Li Tongya's protective true essence. Li Tongya used several true essence attacks to extinguish the fox fire, but this had given the opportunity for the fox to pounce, ready to engage Li Tongya in close combat. However, Li Tongya was well prepared and had already sheathed his sword to gather strength. His hand glowed brightly, and he unleashed the celestial moon slash technique, causing the fox's fur to stand on end as it retreated, spitting out several fox fires in a desperate attempt to neutralize the sword chi. Only then did it manage to fend off the celestial moon slash, and as several sword chis approached, the fox yelped. "Stop! No more! My superior is a demon general. Cannot kill me." The fox screeched, its speech appearing to have gotten smoother. Li Tongya paused, and his sword hung in the air, deciding to seize the opportunity to gather some information. He sheathed his sword and smiled. "Your fox fire is quite formidable," he commented, an eyebrow raised as he glanced at the fox. "Not as formidable as your sword," the fox muttered in response. The fox sighed softly, showing a hint of humanized defeat, before settling down under the large banyan tree. "Are you the immortal from the clan at the foot of the mountain? There's one who uses a bow and has killed many demons. Do you know him?" Immediately after hearing the fox mention a bow user, he knew right away who it was the fox must be referring to. He cupped his fist before responding. "Thank you for your leniency, fellow Taoist. Indeed, he is a younger member of my family." The fox smacked its lips and started grooming its fur, not responding immediately. "How many dies doesn't concern me. Just don't disturb that giant boar. The demons on the outskirts are yours to hunt," he drawled lazily. "May I ask about this demon, General?" Li Tongya inquired as he cupped his fist. The fox stood up and stretched, grinding its teeth. "It's a pig demon at the Foundation Establishment realm, managing all the demons in this area. Very domineering, I must say, eating this and that, demanding I offer spirit bamboo shoots to him every year." Li Tongya nodded slowly, taking in the fox's words. "There indeed are demons of Foundation Establishment realm in these mountains. Luckily for me, I did not penetrate deeper into the terrain and just circle the outskirts." Chapter 115. Fox Demon's Secret News. Looking at the fox's forlorn expression, Li Tongya felt a tug at his heart. He reached into his storage pouch and pulled out a bag of spirit rice, presenting it with a smile. "Great fox, take a look at this." The fox's reddish fur rustled as it lowered its head to sniff the offering. Its eyes blinked with interest before it took a tentative bite. It's rather fragrant. This is spirit rice, yes? What a rare treat. I've heard that the immortal cultivators are fond of it." He paused thoughtfully. "If you want me to do some work for you, I won't settle unless there's 180 gene on the table." Li Tongya chuckled softly, mentally calculating that 180 gene was merely equivalent to a spirit stone. If it could be exchanged for assistance from a creature of the Qi cultivation realm, it would be a lucrative deal indeed. Suppressing his initial hesitation, Li Tongya countered with a proposition. "If you can answer some questions of mine, this bag of spirit rice will be yours." The fox's ears perked up, and it eagerly accepted the offer. Li Tongya tossed the spirit rice to it and asked, "Do you know anything about the demon general?" "Of course," the fox replied confidently before beginning his explanation. "That pig demon is a creature of the Foundation Establishment realm, with 8 lesser demons at the Qi cultivation realm under its command. They collect spirit items for it, and they dwell in a demon cave 200 li south of here. Those of us who have attained the Qi cultivation realm within this region are captured, marked with a seal between the eyebrows, and sent back to stand guard." After saying that, the fox smelled the bag of rice, then glanced at Li Tongya warily. "You're really going to give me this? You didn't poison it, did you?" However, unfortunately for the fox, Li Tongya was too intrigued by its story of the pig demon and was not paying attention, and instead pressed for more information. "What does the seal do? Did the pig demon do the same to you?" The fox raised its head defiantly and snorted. "Humph. Among the 6 caves in Mount Dali, one of the cave masters is the grandmother of the fox demons. If that pig demon dared to take our spirituality away, it would be courting death." However, the fox's defiant expression soon turned somber. "About this spirituality, demonic creatures like us absorb the essence of the sun and moon. After condensing the 6 chakras, a trace of spirituality will form between our eyebrows. If it's destroyed, so will our cultivation and our essence Qi. They too will disintegrate. It is nothing but a vulnerability in the hands of that pig demon, I see." Li Tongya nodded in comprehension after gaining insight into the demon pig's methods. Observing the fox circling the spirit rice, he inquired softly, "Are there any uncaptured demons of the Qi cultivation realm in this area that you know of, fellow Taoist?" "There are 6 more in this area, but knowledge of their locations will cost you." The fox replied with a mischievous grin. Tongya merely laughed and asked, "How long have you lived?" 300 years or so," the fox replied matter-of-factly. Leaning against the root of a large tree, it continued, "Spent my first 60 years in ignorance. It wasn't until my 60s that I condensed the 5th chakra and gained memory. At the age of 277, I condensed a mouthful of spiritual Qi in my stomach and broke through to the Qi cultivation realm. This marked the beginning of my sanity, akin to that of a human. I then spent another 100 years cultivating alone, reaching the 5th heavenly layer of the Qi cultivation realm. Nearly 400 years." Li Tongya exclaimed ambiguously. Demonic creatures like you truly have longevity. Those of us who've reached the Qi cultivation realm only have a lifespan of 200 years. The fox, however, responded despondently with a bittersweet smile. What's there to envy? Foxes who have attained Qi cultivation realm have a lifespan of 500 years, and I'm nearing the end of mine. I've only had spiritual wisdom for the past 100 years or so. The first few 100 years were all spent in cluelessness. So, it's not as advantageous as being an immortal like you. Li Tongya nodded in understanding before being struck by a sudden realization. 300 years ago, there was a great battle in the northern foothills. Can you recall anything about it? He inquired, hopeful. Great battle? The fox thought for a moment, then mumbled, I recall there was indeed a great battle. I was huddled in the cave that night, and the earth shook more than once. The voices of those immortals were like thunder, saying that they wanted something to be handed over. Looking at Li Tongya's anxious expression, the fox stuttered slightly as it continued. Something like secret decree. I was only a lesser demon of the embryonic breathing realm at that time, and so I can't remember much. Li Tongya probed carefully for a while, but was not able to get any further information, and so had decided to give up, though reluctantly. Disappointed, he shook his head, only to notice the fox still looking rather guilty with its head bowed. I did hear a rumor about the northern foothills. The fox finally admitted. Li Tongya raised his head with interest immediately as the fox continued. I once heard an elderly fox passing by who was the one who told me about our grandmother in the cave. She used to beg for food here in the northern foothills when she was around 300 years old. She was dozing in the cave when a white-haired immortal suddenly pulled her out of the tree hole. He paused, as though gathering his thoughts before continuing. The white-haired immortal's cultivation was unfathomable. I remember that he asked my grandmother, have you ever eaten any human, little fox? At that time, the northern foothills had just gone through a great war and were not yet inhabited. So Grandma replied that she had never. Li Tongya listened intently as the fox continued with the story. The fox had mimicked the immortal's ethereal voice perfectly while it stammered with its own. The performance it put on nearly got Li Tongya applauding, and he was rather amused. The white-haired immortal then said, there's a group of villagers at the foot of this mountain. Watch over and protect them for 200 years, and I will grant you a boon. Grandma nodded, and the immortal tapped between her brows and left a mark there before departing. Li Tongya eagerly asked, what boon did she receive? How should I know? The fox rolled its eyes and then continued. Therefore, the foxes on Mount Dali never eat people. Although 200 years have passed, Grandma still keeps the demons on Mount Dali in check. Some years ago, a large bird ate a person at the foot of the mountain. Grandma was enraged. She drove the bird away and forbade it from ever coming near Mount Dali again, or else she would eat it. Oh, Li Tongya nodded. Our Li family has also been farming in these northern foothills for 300 years, yet I've never heard of any family having an immortal in their ancestry. I have doubts about the truth of this story, but for now I should just listen. He looked at the fox and asked, do you have a name, fellow Taoist? The fox squeaked, I've always stayed under this big banyan tree. They all call me the white banyan fox. As for surnames, we demons don't concern ourselves with such things. Li Tongya nodded, then cupped his fist respectfully and said, my name is Li Tongya. I've gained plenty of knowledge from today's conversation. I'll come back to visit you in a few months, fellow Taoist. As Li Tongya rode away on the wind, the fox let out a long sigh and flopped onto the ground with a thud. Picking up a mouthful of spirit rice, the fox carefully savored it with a satisfying smack of its jaws. This is really fragrant. The fox mumbled quietly to itself in enjoyment. Li Xianxian succeeded the position of family head, and a year had passed in the blink of an eye. Although members of the major sect still wore white attire, everyone was gradually getting used to Li Xuanxuan's leadership. Li Tongya secluded himself in the mountains most of the time, while Li Xianfeng spent most of his time slaying demons and cultivating. Li Xianxian had become the nominal and actual Li family's figure of authority. In his early 20s, he handled family matters cautiously, ensuring that everything was arranged properly and in order. Sitting in his seat in the main courtyard with Li Xiaowen standing beside him, Li Xianxian smiled and looked at Chen Donghe. Have you made a decision yet? He asked. Chen Donghe cupped his fist and frowned, saying, the matter of joining the main family is of great importance. I can't make a final decision rashly. I need to return home to consult my father first. Li Xianxian set his tea bowl down and gently replied, indeed, but you shouldn't be so concerned. After all, the family rule states that only those in the major sect can practice the river one qi technique. This is an opportunity one have found for you after pleading to second uncle. Chen Donghe nodded with gratitude, cupped his fist, then left Li Xiaowen, then called for someone to remove the teacup that had been used by Chen Donghe. Family head, Xianfeng, is also 14 years old now. It's time to consider his marriage too. You're right. Li Xianxian agreed with a curt nod. He unfurled the wooden slips in his hand and calculated for a moment before speaking. How many talismans did second uncle send to the foot of the mountain this month? 5. Family head. Chapter 115. Fox Demon's secret news: the talisman ink and talisman paper at home are running out. Xianfeng will need to make a trip to the market this month. Li Xianxian pointed out that as the clan's manpower gradually increased, the spirit fields on the land had now fully developed. After deducting the tributes to Azure Pawn sect and provisions for family cultivators, there was still a surplus. Excluding the tributes, we still have 300 gene of spirit rice annually as surplus. The annual clan salary for major sect cultivators is 10 gene, 5 gene for minor sects, and 1 gene for branches, totaling 86 gene. There is still a balance of 2 spirit stones worth. Originally, the Leaf family did not have many cultivators. However, those with spiritual orifices from the 4 towns had merged into the Leaf family through marriage, mostly becoming part of the minor sect cultivators, and hence were entitled to a reward of spirit rice. Second uncle can draw about 60 talismans annually, selling for 20 spirit stones each. After deducting costs, he can earn about 2 or 3 spirit stones. With Xianfeng and Dongha hunting demonic beasts in the mountains, the annual income can reach 7 spirit stones. That's roughly the price of a Dharma artifact from the embryonic breathing realm. There were over 70 spirit stones in the family's inventory. The Leaf family had been saving up to lay a large formation from Mount Lijiang, so every spirit stone earned brought great happiness to Li Xianxian.